Okay. Is it, are are our mics live now?
I think our mics are live now.
Hello
Oh,
and welcome to the Gladiator podcast, your place for Gladiator news and content. Here today we have our amazing host Effie, who told us when things were starting. But
I'm so sorry.
more importantly, we have the D&D AFR set review. I'm Joker Boney, and here with me today we have,
UFO?
as well as,
Seismic lots?
and continuing onward,
I'm told I'm lightning, but I can't be sure anymore.
yes, of course. So, Dungeons and Dragons, Adventure in the Forgotten Realms. This just released on Thursday, right? Thursday? So, like, 3 days ago?
Yeah,
The
This
8th,
week.
I
Yeah.
believe, yes.
Yes.
These cards are fresh out of the oven. They're not even properly in paper yet. So,
Nope.
make sure
So
to
you cannot
watch
eat
us.
them even if you want to.
Oh, don't
Look, you
eat
mentioned
the,
ovens.
Don't
Yep,
eat the.
It's been
magical
exactly
cards.
3 days, despite what it feels like.
That is,
Time moves
yeah,
forward,
it's been,
indeed.
time moves ever forward, as do cards. Yeah. So, God, I was not ready. All right. So, important notes. We are talking about this from a gladiator point of view. We are talking about this specifically, how cards will play in Gladiator, what will happen. There are better places to check if you want to hear about limited or standard or historic or any of
Also-
those other amazing places, as well as what UFO is going to say.
If you want a full set review, really looking at any limited set review will get you a decent idea. And I think there's some text reviews of the cards as well somewhere.
Probably somewhere in the world. I'm sure you can find it. You found this. Also important, we are not doing every single card. As mentioned, we are very much only going to be talking about some cards. We cannot be here for so long. You've seen the Strixhaven review? Yeah. So, I think with that, it's time to get started. Don't you guys agree?
Yeah. Oh,
Something
oh
like
my
that.
god.
Nice.
I
You
only
wouldn't
got
be
10
here
hours
all
of sleep
day,
last
Effie.
night.
We can do every
Strong
card, coward.
start. We've got a long day ahead.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Wonderful start. All
What's
good.
wrong?
Wonderful stuff,
We have
everyone.
fun here.
Yes, we do. Oh, our first card, Dancing Sword. It is one in a
Um,
light. What?
Yeah, go for it.
I just yes.
I am now
Wait,
confused.
it's live. It's one in a light for an artifact
Yes.
equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+1. When equipped creature dies, you may have Dancing Sword become a 2/1 construct artifact creature with flying in Ward 1. If you do, it is not an equipment. Equip 1.
So,
So,
did we both...
no, this
Someone
is your
talk
card.
about the card.
I don't know
Someone
whose
talk
card
about
this
the
is,
card,
actually.
please.
Yeah, this is my
We should-
card. Okay. Dancing Sword is a very good equipment. It's being 2 mana usually is not the greatest sign for an equipment. However, this has both a really cheap equip cost, has a good effect, and in the event that the creature dies and you don't really have something you want to equip it on next, you can turn it into its own really formidable creature. Having both flying and a small amount of protection makes this really good for things like Death and Taxes, or even just some aggro decks.
Yeah, it seems like an interesting one. I'm not 100% on where it goes, but having Ward 1 makes me very interested. Being evasive and harder to kill than most things is very nice, just for the fact that, it's like, As you said, it's very cheap to get started. It's on raid equipment at least, so if nothing else, it is giving +2 damage to the clock, which is not nothing. Just
I
like
will
Yeah.
all
say,
round,
I
it's what we need for a playable equipment.
yeah, like it's good to see equipment like this, which like does still have enough utility to be worth considering, instead of being like an Ember Cleave or a limited unplayable.
Yeah, this equipment is fine. Full stop. You know.
Yeah.
And that's cool.
And
That's
I think
cool.
that's kind of a similar line with a lot of the equipment in this set, is that they are fine. Not necessarily great, not going into every deck in their colors if they're colored, or into every deck if they're colorless, but just fine. And if I see a dancing sword or another equipment from AFR across the table from me, I'm not going to be that surprised, because a lot of them are pretty good.
Yeah, for sure.
Though there are some things that possibly could have been equipment that ended up being absolutely terrible.
Yes.
Many of which we're
Unlike
not
our
going to be
next
talking
card.
about.
Yeah.
Unlike our next card, which could
I-
not have been
I've
an
had
equipment.
some conflicting experiences with this particular card, but we'll talk about those in a second.
Well, let's say what the card is first.
This next card is Guardian of Faith. For 1 white, we have a 3/2 Flash Vigilant Spirit Knight. And when it enters the battlefield, any number of other target creatures you control phase out. We got phasing again. What?
Apparently, phasing is not is simple enough to be printed in a core set twice.
I mean,
Phasing
they said it
is-
would happen occasionally. And
Yeah, but
Phasing
only-
phase
so far it's
out
only
very
happened.
deciduous.
But so
You
far,
can
it's
have
only
it
happened in a core
once
set.
per set as a treat.
As a
No,
treat.
once per core
Well, yeah,
set so
'cause-
far.
Except for the
second is-
times where
it
we
phases
get like
back in.
3 phasing effects in one set, like this
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
There's
There's
3?
some. Yeah.
There's
The
at
third.
least 3. There's
There's-
Blink Dog.
Oh,
There's,
right, the Blink
Divine
Dog.
Smite, and
Yeah.
there's this.
Yeah.
Yep,
Right.
I forgot Blink Dog.
We can blank out non-creature permanents.
So,
Yeah.
my experience playing with this card has been a little bit adversarial. Seismic gave me a list of Jeskai Pyromancer to play, and it never felt like it had much of a home, but partially because that particular list was a little bit threat light, and Guardian of Faith is more of a card that you want in a much more threat dense environment where you're protecting things with it as opposed to it being the threat itself. Which
Yeah,
I think
for
it's pretty
yeah.
good at.
Yeah, for sure. I think it being not great in the Jeskai Pyro is the same reason we cut Sigrid from what's it called? Sigrid from Naya Warriors.
Warriors.
Just
Yeah.
It's 1 white for an effect that is good, but it is not an effect that is good enough for that deck at that cost. This is definitely a card that I expect to see pop up a lot more in mono white or white X. So I've thought about this in red white. I haven't gotten to play it yet. This is definitely great for black white. Just when it comes to white protection effects, the only ones that have been really good are the ones that can push damage. So we've tried Selfless Glyphleaver from the last set. Not that great. We tried we're currently playing the one from Ravnica Allegiance. I forget what it's called, but
Unbreakable Formation.
Unbreakable Formation, that one's really good. And then one that I've been playing that some other people have given me flack about is Make a Stand, because it gives +1/+0 and indestructible to the team. Still kills people. And that's what's important. It's about pushing damage while also protecting, so the card's
Yeah,
not dead. And
in
this
mono
is a
white,
3/2.
right?
Yeah.
This is more on mono white. Yeah, Make a Stand is more on
Yeah.
mono white. But this is a 3/2. This does 3 damage. It punches in the face opponent. It also
I
technically
do-
has haste.
Yeah, you can just flash it in on like their end step if they don't play out like a sweeper or spot removal. The most like, I guess, easy comparison to Guardian of Faith is Glorious Protector, I think. A similar creature that protects all of your other creatures and has flash. I think that depending on the kind of deck, this will either be close to the same power as Glorious Protector or usually get a little bit overshadowed by the Glorious Protector. But there's a few instances where I think this is actually better than Glorious Protector, and I
Yeah,
think that
actually,
in like token dense decks, like this is much better than Protector.
also Glorious
Mhm.
Protector doesn't Glorious Protector works, as Wrath Protection in that it puts all the creatures underneath the Glorious Protector and then dies and everything comes back.
Yeah.
That's the use. That's against Ugin in the same way that way, like that where indestructible doesn't happen, exile sort of stuff. Um,
Yep.
Guardian of Faith, however, is also able to protect this creature from like targeted removal and not have to die for it to come back.
Yeah. The fact that this can not just replace your board and then allow your board to survive a wrath or something, but also this card just completely, it doesn't have to stop uh at protecting your board. It also gets in for 3 later. Like
Um,
this is pretty good in that aspect.
Yeah, and
the issue,
as mentioned in chat, just like this is always 3 mana. This is always going to be 3 mana. Also, just a very small line of text, and obviously it's not important. The fact that this doesn't say non-spirit is nice. We get a lot of effects like Glorious Protector that say non-angel because they're like, oh god, it's gonna go infinite with itself. Thankfully, phasing doesn't go infinite with anything. I will regret that later. And we don't need to worry about
Yeah.
that. But more importantly, this is always 3 mana, and this is always +3 to your clock. And while Glorious Protector sometimes, like as mentioned, sometimes it just eats a wrath, keeps your clock the same. Sometimes you use it to save from spot removal and you get the creature back later, maybe. That's always changing your clock in various ways. So I think I'm on the train of wanting both and maybe cutting back on some of the non-creature ways of protecting creatures, but there's definitely situations where I'm sleeving this up first before Glorious Protector, just because it's cheap, efficient. I don't have to foretell it first, and they're like, oh yes, they have Glorious Protector. So
Yeah, it's like,
Guardian of
oh, they
Faith
have.
is Guardian of Faith is the one where I'm like, I'm more willing to play this first because the face is a lot better and it's a lot less forecasted.
yeah, and the
Yeah.
worrisome bit, unfortunately, is this two toughness associated with a 3-drop, meaning that you do need to consistently get value from the enter the battlefield trigger because it's gonna die to a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think if you aren't doing anything with this ETB, it's not the greatest, but honestly, 3/2 flash vigilance for 3 is not terrible, and you know,
But as we saw in
it's
Jeskai Pyro, not
yeah,
often good enough.
yeah.
there will definitely
Mhm.
be times versus mono red where I put this in for no value, block whatever weird goblin they're playing, and then be like, oh yes, I just attack you for 3, and what are you gonna do? Oh, you block it with your Viashino Pyromancer.
Or you
Oh.
try and do that and you get shocked.
Or
Yeah.
yeah. So
Shock is a great card.
this card might be a mileage may vary sort of situation, but it definitely has a lot of potential and it can do a lot of strong things.
Agreed.
Like our next card, Icing Death, Frost Tyrant. It's 2 white for a 4/3 flying vigilance that says when it dies, create Icing Death Frost Tongue, a legendary white equipment with equipped creature gets +2/+0, and whenever this creature attacks, tap target creature defending player controls, and it has equipped 2. Dragon. And I'll be talking.
This, yeah,
I'll talk about this card. I'm not sure if this card is good enough, but it's very cool. And the reason that I'm not sure if it's good enough is at 3 toughness, meaning there's a lot of bolt type effects in the format, but it has an effect when it dies. But there's a lot of exile type removal that's seeing a lot of play. So, I'm going to talk about this card, and like I do with a lot of cards, I just want to make it clear that I'm not sure if this is good enough, but I'm not saying this is 10 out of 10, please craft right now. But
Yeah, it's a nice threat in a threat-dense deck, I think, is
Yeah.
how I'll
maybe,
present that,
but
you know?
but this is a lot better for, say, a red-white equipment deck than, say, pure mono-white. This is one of those cards where it meets in the middle. Not quite as good as, say, a Halvar or a Toralf,
Mm-hmm.
but this meets in the middle where it's a threat that wears equipment well because it has evasion and it has vigilance, but it also makes a really good equipment. A really good equipment. That equipment, that line on the bottom,
Yeah.
super good. We've
Super
talked
good,
about
yeah.
playing very bad 3-mana 2/3s before to get the effect that happens when this creature attacks. There are so many cards that I have played that have that line of text because they have that line of text or something like it. So there is a lot of potential here, and I don't know quite if it's good enough, if there's a home, if there's anything like that. But this is one of those cards where when I see it, my mind goes, oh god, it's going to die to Bolt. But at the same time, it also goes, I'm going to die to this card very badly.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is an on power, like, it is a power on cost creature with. It doesn't have an ETB, obviously, but it has a very powerful way to make an impact if you don't get into untap with it, as long as it doesn't die to certain effects. And it makes your low drops much more relevant late game. So, who knows? Maybe this card shows up more.
We've
Yep.
talked on this podcast a lot about how making it so that your opponent can't block or it's harder for your opponent to block is really useful in this format because the best plays by an early board present control deck are things that do value and also block, and also, you know, playing aggressively means that your opponent likely has to be put on the back foot. You know, things that make it hard to block are very good. However, I don't like that this card is there's so many areas where I can think of that I'm just like, wow, this card is terrible. Like if it say comes into the battlefield on turn 4, if you're on an aggro curve out and your opponent then meets it with a Wrath of God, then I'm probably not feeling the greatest. It has the equipment that hangs back, but
I don't know.
that
If
doesn't
if
matter
I'm
too much against a lot that control does, I think.
if I'm playing a red white equipment strategy and they Wrath of God and I get this equipment, it's like, as long as I've been scheduling threats with Wrath in mind, I think I'm actually pretty happy with that. And to address chat, which is, we're live. It was mentioned of 4-drop is pretty competitive, but I think this is the one where if you just need to go as fast as possible, where I think we are right now, actually. This isn't this isn't as good in as many situations as a lot of the 3/4s that see play in mono white. But this is a card that can go faster, can block better versus certain decks depending on, because of the vigilance. And because of that death trigger, it has more relevance depending on the type of control you're facing. Obviously, there's going to be times that this dies to a Scorching Dragonfire, and that's going to make me sad. But there's going to be times that this dies to Wrath of God, and then I play my 1/1 with haste, and I slap this on it, and now it's a 3/1, and they can't block with their whatever they played before or after or whatever, right? This is not a card that you play always. This is a card that in certain decks is for meta purposes because you just need to go as fast as possible, or there's so much non-exile removal and you need to be able to just make every threat matter. This is
Yeah.
a threat that shows up in that slot that matters and has power equal to its casting cost, which is not true for the other 4-drops that this deck normally plays.
On the same idea of like not being like amazing in the fastest format, um I really like Icing Death as an answer to seeing a lot of Glorybringer, because this is a really good threat when you aren't facing a Glorybringer, and if your opponent does try to answer it with a Glorybringer, they don't get the ability to attack without repercussion.
Yeah, they did. This is a dragon, so it does get around the fact that Gorebringer does say non-dragon, which is a text that does not come up often. I have had
We
the
love it when
dueling
it does.
I have had the dueling Gorybringers in this format once, and my opponent has exerted a Gorybringer with there being only a Gorybringer on my side of the board. That was nice.
Oh,
That was
We
nice.
you
oof.
make that mistake once.
You make that mistake once.
I keep getting baited by you guys seeming to go to a transition, so I'm just gonna do it. Next card is Loyal Warhound. 1 and a white for a 3/1 dog with vigilance. When Loyal Warhound enters the battlefield, if an opponent controls more lands than you, search your library for a basic plains card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. This is our 4th card.
Yep.
Fourth card.
Ramp dog. Ramp dog. Ramp dog. Ramp dog.
Oh yeah,
Ram.
that's great.
I'm a really big fan of this because it works within the low land count sort of aggressive strategies that we've seen in White X aggro, where oftentimes you kind of just want to be at like 3 to 4 lands maximum, and Loyal Warhound will allow, if your timing gets a little bit off, to bring you back up there. The unfortunate thing is that it's not the easiest to do on curve. But
Yeah, there's
even
a
then, right?
so
you're still
in
okay with it.
60 card. Yeah, in 60 card formats, these kind of cards are much better because what you do is you just side them out in games that you're on the play, and so that you only have to think about it when you are trying to play this on turn 2 when on turn 2 when your opponent's ahead, or you only play this in situations where your opponent's definitely going to be higher up on lands than you. In this format, the enters the battlefield ability is going to come up less, like per times you cast it. However, it's still a great body. Like, 1 toughness kind of sucks, but that's kind of standard for your 1 and 2 drop creatures. Having vigilance doesn't matter too much, but it does matter in certain matchups.
It kind of
And then
saves the
when
card in
that
my
ability,
eyes, actually.
yeah, when that ability happens, though, it is an insane card, and having this vigilance so that it attacks into mono red, it still blocks and trades with most threats that other aggro decks have. Like, this is pretty good.
Mhm. And the thing to remember, though, is on the play, the earliest you're going to be able to get this trigger against someone who's playing 1 land per turn is your turn 3. On the draw, it's going to be your turn 4.
I mean, unless they're playing into the north or an emergent sequence.
I said
Um,
1 land per turn.
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I
sorry.
said someone
Yeah.
playing 1 land per turn is turn 3 and turn 4.
I listen.
Um,
I'm fully functional right now, as is this dog. Yeah.
But
I mean,
on that note,
Oh yeah, that's
Um,
fine.
we do have a lot of really playable ways to put extra lands into play.
Mhm.
So, if I'm looking at what I'm expecting to be a pretty green meta, Loyal Warhound shoots up because I'm fairly expectant that they're going to be playing things like Into the North, maybe Growth Spirals, Explore,
2
and when
explorers,
that
maybe.
happens, Yeah. Loyal Warhound is an insane card that doesn't punish necessarily for having that happen, but allows you to curve a lot easier and to sometimes jump in the curve and go from like a this 2-drop to, a Blade Historian.
Yeah, just good magic. This card allows more fun, weird magic to happen. Also, if you happen to miss a land drop, don't worry about it. You just go 1-drop, 2-drop, 2-drop, and you get. Yeah, this plays well in the types of decks that we see, and this is just one of those cards like when it triggers, you're like, yes.
Yep.
But when it
And
doesn't, you're like, oh no, I have a 3/1 vigilance.
Yeah.
the fact that this
You know.
also just like lets me keep more 2-landers is very nice.
Whether or not you should keep those 2-landers is besides the point, but we're gonna keep
Well,
them anyway.
1-drop, 2-drop, 2-drop, with this being the second 2-drop, does actually do pretty well.
Oh yeah, no,
Yeah.
for sure. I've done many curves like that, especially if my 1-drop is something like a Legion's Landing. So this is just gonna be more times where I keep medium hands.
And
Letting
three power and vigilance is just a pretty good rate, though this one 3/1 electrolyze is getting more popular, but
Yeah.
not everything will die to electrolyze.
Something that won't
speaking
die
of-
to Electrolyze, as this
Speaking
amazing
of
throw.
creatures with 3 power and vigilance, yeah.
Yeah, we have a Nadar, Selfless Paladin, for 2 and a white. This is a legendary creature, Dragon Knight, with Vigilance, as per mentioned, and 3 power, but as well as 3 toughness. And it says, when Nadar, Selfless Paladin, enters battlefield or attacks, venture into the dungeon, which we'll get to in a moment. And other creatures you control get +1/+1 as long as you've completed a dungeon.
Venture.
So, Venture.
let's
yes.
do the abstract of what venture is.
Venture.
Venture
Venture.
is a mechanic that effectively has 3 cards worth of rules reminder text in the form of 3 tokens.
Special action venture into the dungeon.
Yeah, they're not literally tokens. They are cards, which does matter in some cases and doesn't matter in other cases. That
like
what
this
what the
format-
dungeons are is weird, but they
Dungeons
work.
are a headache. Let's go into the first one. Let's talk about all of them. Let's talk
Tomb of
about
Annihilation, if we can, please.
yes, please.
Yeah, that's the one I'd like to talk about most for this card.
I mean, I was
It's-
actually, if we saved any for later, I was going to say that one, but we
Yeah.
can. Let's talk about all of them. Yeah. All right. Tomb of Annihilation. Tomb first. If you venture into the dungeon, you can choose to enter the Tomb of Annihilation, and your first step is Trapped Entryway, which is each player loses 1 life. Then, if you venture again, you can choose the direction you go. You can
I
go
don't
into
believe
the
you.
oubliette. Oh. I mean, nobody
Tomb of-
wants to enter the
Tomb-
oubliette.
You shouldn't enter the oubliette in most cases.
Don't enter the oubliette.
When you
Yeah.
enter the oubliette, enchant target creature. That creature phases out until oubliette leaves it. No.
Yes, that's
Discard a card, sacrifice an artifact, a creature, and a land. Just you.
God, that's so bad. Just
Just
casually
you.
4 for 1 yourself.
and yeah, you 4/4 yourself for just 1 less dungeon like it's not worth it in almost every situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very weird effect. Or you can go to the Veils of Fear. The Veils of Fear. Each player loses 2 life unless they discard a card. Then, if you venture again, you go into the Sandfall Cell. All these places are delightful, by the way. Just absolutely
Wonderful.
delightful.
On your vacation now.
In the Sandfall Cell, each player loses 2 life unless they sacrifice an artifact, creature, or a land. Fun.
Katmuzi reminded me about Oubliette. For some reason, Oubliette taps the creature before phasing it out.
Yes, yes, you do.
Magic.
It's fun. And then,
Um,
for a
then
very
for all
fun
that work,
last
you
step,
get-
yeah, you get to go to the Cradle of the Death God. You get to pick up a Death Baby. That Death Baby is the Atropal, a 4/4 legendary black god horror token with Death Touch. So,
So, just
This
talking
is-
about like two.
you
Hmm?
go. You
Just
say it.
talking about Tomb of Annihilation, this is your like pure aggro, deal a bunch of damage dungeon, where you're completing this in 4 total ventures, and when you do, you get a pretty insane body if the amount of that you're paying for venture is not that much.
Sorry.
Bless you.
What?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Snez.
So, just in general, this is a very yeah. As mentioned, this is sort of the aggro dungeon, going all the way through. You just the treasure. The treasure is in our hearts.
The treasure
and
is the
also in
god.
the Outropal, which we picked up
Also-
from the
Yeah.
Death Cradle.
If we want to talk mechanically, the Tomb of Annihilation was a dungeon that players were forced into not for treasure, but because they were literally dying if they didn't.
Yes.
Yeah.
The treasure was killing
Survival.
the death baby, and no longer slowly withering away because it was feeding on your very essence.
Counterpoint UFO. What
Fun
if
for
the
the whole
real
thing,
treasure was the friends we made along the way?
And what if the real
If they
treasure
survived.
was the way in which we made the
friends
friends
didn't.
along the way?
Cholt is not that friendly of a setting.
And neither is this dungeon.
Um,
in the fact that
no,
it helps
yeah.
you and your opponent die very fast. And if they decide not to die, they have to sacrifice some very important permanents, which can be very important in some matchups. So, you just... This is the... Yeah,
It's
as mentioned, this is the dungeon if you want to go fast. Looking at just Nadar, if this is your only venture card that you're playing, it's going to be until turn 6 when you actually get to complete a dungeon, which is maybe not the best rate for what it's trying to do, but
Yeah,
this
you
does...
could do turn 5 if you have
If you
some
want to
reason
go
to
to
If
Oubliette.
you hate yourself.
Yeah, if you hate yourself.
Yeah, I think that it's for the purposes of cards like Nadar, it's in a way not really, oh, I'm going to finish this by, turn X, but rather I'm getting these like essentially free effects on an already good creature,
Mhm.
and it's only worth it if you are having it on an already good card.
Yeah, for sure. And this is a very good card to talk about that with.
Yeah.
And if we
Yeah.
could actually go to at least the Lost Mine of Fandelver, I do want to talk about this
Yeah,
card
let's go to
in
that
another...
for now. We can come back to Dungeon of the Mad Mage later.
Maybe we
I
can talk
got
about
things to say. Lost my
Alright.
Yep.
Lost Mine is
Last
up.
mine.
Cool.
Okay.
So this starts with the cave entrance, which is scry 1. So you enter the battlefield, you scry 1. Then, when you attack, you can do one of two things. If you're trying to go fast, you can make a 1/1 body. A goblin friend. You've made friends with the goblin in the goblin lair. Or you can go to the mine tunnels and create a treasure token. Have you ever wanted to consider casting a 5/5 on turn 4? Or sorry, a 5-drop on turn 4. Has that ever crossed your mind? Here's another way to do that in white. This is not going to come up in most white aggro decks, but this could come up in a deck like, say, green-white midrange.
It's not that
Notably,
uncommon. It attack like the
Yeah.
its first attack makes you a treasure if you go to the Lost Mine.
No, that's what I'm
That's-
saying. I'm more so saying that mono-white aggro decks aren't playing 5-drops. Most of them, at least.
Well, but maybe you're playing a
Yeah.
3-drop and a 2-drop, and that's 5 mana total.
True.
yeah, or you are like feel like you're probably going to get stuck on land, or you are stuck on land, and so you just need a treasure in order to cast your 4-drop, things like that.
Yeah,
Um,
this
I
this
think
is
the
just
bigger
another
reason-
way another way to just accelerate faster in decks that either don't want to take turns off to accelerate or just like don't have the time to.
The bigger reason to take the Goblin Lair over the Mine Tunnels for me, though, is that you, in a aggro deck, you get access to the next set of rooms. I think the best for that is the storeroom, yeah, which is to put a +1/+1 counter on target creature.
Which
And
is
then,
nice. You can, in the world where we went with the Goblin Lair, you could attack with a 3/3 and a 2/2 that turn.
Or a 4/4 and a 1/1. Yeah.
Yep.
Or
any number of those.
depending on. And then if you go to either the Goblin Lair or the Mine Tunnels, you get the Dark Pool, which is each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. I think this is easily going to be the mode that I choose the least. But when I choose it, it's because it's either going to do something funny like cause exact damage, or maybe I survive a bolt because of it. Who knows?
We'll come back to the Dark Pool later. I'll talk to you about it.
Yeah, Dark Pool has more use.
Dark Pool has plenty. We'll get to what Dark Pool is actually doing later.
The Temple. Drawing a card as a final bit. Again, 4 ventures to finish this dungeon, the same as Tomb of Annihilation. So you're still going to be getting to... You okay there, Lightning?
You good?
Am I having noise? Whoops.
There was a loud breath for a moment. It sounds like everything's fine now.
I don't think that came through on stream.
Okay.
I didn't hear anything.
It looks like it did.
Good.
It looks like it did.
It looked like it did. I hope it didn't. Who knows?
I don't know. Anywho,
weird. Moving on.
Anyways,
because the Lost Mine and Tomb of Annihilation complete at about the same time, the question really is: are you looking for the 4/4 token, or are you looking for a little bit more consistent value throughout, and then like all the value of the Tomb of Annihilation is piled onto that final bit, whereas the Lost Mine is just value throughout the each venture. Right?
Yeah, it's definitely a like. I think you get a better list of things if you go with Lost Mine, but sometimes you just want to, hit for 5 extra damage when you're going through.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure in Limited, most people have decided that Lost Mine is the correct place to venture into.
Lost Mine and Phandelver in general just feels like the correct dungeon most of the time. The other ones are cool.
It's short, it has a good ending effect of drawing a card, and
even if you don't get there, you're okay.
The one that, and it's the one that you get the least hubris by either not getting enough venture triggers or being too confident in your ability to close out the game before they can kill you.
Mm-hmm. So, speaking of hubris...
Speaking of hubris, let's go to our friend Oswald Fiddlebender. 2-mana 2/2. Gnome Artificer. With the word magical tinkering describing its ability. Yeah,
which has
very
no
quickly.
Mechanical... It's flavor. It's basically the flavor text of this card is in the front.
Yes,
and also
in the bottom, but
it's got flavor text in the front and flavor text in the back because
flavor text sandwich.
Flavor text sandwich. There we go.
Flavor text sandwich. Yes,
I like the description for these cards.
This is going to show up on a lot of cards, and it's just like it's a way to add flavor to the set, and I like it. For a white mana and tap, sacrifice an artifact. Search your library for an artifact card with mana value equal to 1 plus plus the sacrificed artifact's mana value, put it onto battlefield, then shuffle. Activate only as a sorcery. We got Artifact Pod.
We got
Artifact
Pod.
Notably, unlike other effects like this does not say non-creature artifact.
This is true.
Yeah, you can
turn
a very specific scrap trawler off of this.
Or so in a equipment deck, turn a now obsolete equipment into a artifact creature that you have a little bit higher.
That is true.
So Oswald Fiddlebender is the first time in this set review where we see flavor words, which I like especially for the D&D set because it really emulates the same idea that D&D does, where every ability in D&D is predicated by a short, like usually like 4-word, 1 to 4 word description of what that ability is named, and then describing the ability at length. And it really emulates that idea of reading a D&D rule book pretty well. However, the actual text of the card is also very good if you want to be playing Oswald in, say, equipment, where you want to be turning equipment into either better equipment, say, turning 2-drops into things like Maul of the Skyclaves that auto-equip on entry, as
Mhm.
You can
well
use this
as
to trigger
in...
Dancing Sword.
Yeah, you can turn Dancing Sword into Maul of the Skyclaves and then equip Maul of the Skyclaves on Dancing Sword.
Yeah, you can
No.
if
No.
the
No.
creature
Not-
attached
you
to
can-
sword is a
You
2-drop.
can sacrifice
Yeah.
It's a
an
2-drop
You can
artifact
sacrifice
creature.
to a
creature.
creature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The reason
Less
I
cute. Less
put
cute.
this on a list is for things like Paradox, where you're playing a lot of frankly not great artifacts, and being able to turn things that are meant to be sacrificed in some way into good artifacts later as the game progresses is really useful. And sometimes the thing that's keeping you from comboing off with like Paradox Engine is not that you don't have the stuff to go off with artifacts, but rather that you just don't have a Hedron archive. And when you can sacrifice any 3-drop that you have flying around and turn it into a Hedron archive, that works pretty dang well. You
Mm-hmm.
you have to get exactly 1 higher, which makes me like this traditionally more in Paradox, because Paradox has things you want to be searching at pretty much any given mana cost. So this also lets you turn your higher mana value artifacts into things that better end the game, whether that be Paradox itself, or say potentially turning a lithoform engine into a Paradox, or turning a Paradox, if you don't have the content to actually go off with Paradox, into Bolus's Citadel, things like that. You get a lot of options here.
I
Mhm.
do also plan on playing this a lot with Emery, so that the fact I'm sacrificing artifacts is not a downside, but in fact a benefit. So I'm just
Depends.
sacrificing it and then
sounds
casting
good.
it, and then
Yeah.
my Paradox triggers, and then I get to do both again. So I sacrifice whatever I need to, and then I bring that back with Emery. And then I'm just sitting in this puddle of value until either me or my opponent becomes soup.
Yeah. Emery and
Yeah.
Paradox is a pretty common loop piece, and Oswald does help it a bit.
Yeah,
Um,
also just like as many people are like focusing on Scrap Trawler, this helps Scrap Trawler go it goes infinite sideways. It's fine.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. It needs to go
Here-
sideways to do stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
And you can't it's a lot harder to like chain with Oswald if you aren't using Paradox, like you can with, say, Vanifar and Pyre and things like that. It's harder to just chain in just a couple turns from a short from a low mana value to like a super high mana value, or to a combo. But Oswald's power comes in being able to just turn things that don't matter that much in your current situation into whatever matters the most.
Yeah. Quarter monitor does let you go from 1 to 3, though.
Yeah. But I think that's generally about the biggest you can skip with it without
Yeah.
using a Paradox.
That's as far
Um,
as I'm aware, yes.
That's fine. This card is
Yeah.
gonna do a lot of thing. And
sometimes you just want all of the things you're getting from like that first point to your final point. And sometimes you don't really care about skipping because you're having good fun all across the way.
yeah,
Also,
and
it's
sometimes
just like a 2-2 for 2.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
it
good.
is also a 2-2-4-2 if it ever needs to swing in, because sometimes you just need to swing in Paradox or in equipment decks.
Well, it being a 2-2
Especially
does
for
actually make
equipment
it
decks,
better
right?
for
Yeah,
equipment
especially
decks.
for equipment decks.
Yeah.
In Paradox, it would be like they kind of want it to be a 1-3 at least, and it's
Yeah.
not. 2-2 is kind of worse for Paradox, better for more aggressive plans.
Paradox
Because being
also
a
just
2-2
plays a lot of X2s anyway, so it doesn't really care.
I mean, it's not allowed to care, but it still does care.
Yeah. What if
You
we
know what I
made it
care
an
about?
X3 though?
Are you saying we should do that with our next card, Paladin class?
Yeah.
Which
Let's do
for a
that.
white mana is an enchantment class, and its first ability says spells your opponents cast during your turn cost 1 more to cast. And then it has this weird ability that says for 2 and a white, I can level it up to level 2, and creatures you control get +1/+1. And then I could level up to level 3 for 5 mana. And then whenever you attack until end of turn, target attacking creature gets +1/+1 for each other attacking creature and gains double strike. Do you mean with this?
Yeah, I do. So in Dominaria, we got a really revolutionary new enchantment type in Sagas, where the left side of the card was a text box, and you put the art on the right side of the card. And now I think we're kind of on a slippery slope, because in just a few years, we've also got one that takes the right side of the card and puts art on the left. And Mark Rosewater, I know you're not listening to this, but if you are, I think it's a bit of slippery slope. What's next? We're going to put text boxes on the top of cards, or, God forbid, text boxes on the bottom of cards.
Oh no,
I mean, we did get the full
Imagine.
text box basic lands.
we did. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm still waiting for those to arrive. I did order them.
What's next? Text box nowhere on the cards?
So,
So,
One second. I'm still. It's been like a decade. I'm still furious that they did full art cryptic command.
oh, that was the
Furious
biggest
they did
mistake.
that.
all right.
I love that
Seismic.
card.
Now
I hate it too.
To ask you some more theoretical questions, is class and the level ability, is this level up?
No.
So it's not level up, and you don't
Does,
put level counters on it in any way, but
does
everything
it get
is
counters
additive.
at all?
No.
No.
Is there any way to track this other than remembering it?
I mean, you
No?
can use like the same things that you use for counters, but it's not technically counters.
Awesome.
Also, you know,
Fun.
what the interesting thing about it is that despite it having level 2 and level 3 printed on the card, on none of the classes is level 1 actually printed. It's just
This is
true.
implied that you're at level 1.
Yeah.
Just implied that you're
Thankfully,
level 1.
you start at level 1.
It is
Totally.
also implied that you cannot skip from level 1 to 3. You cannot, so you have to go level 2 and then level 3. So that's also fun.
Yeah.
I want
But,
them
like-
to print a class card in a future set where you just like only see level 4 and level 5. And
Oh no!
Oh,
Don't
no,
do
no,
that
no,
to
no.
me.
I mean, I don't think these cards are coming back for a while, but I want them to.
Yeah.
I like chaos. I want to mess around with stuff like
we get
this.
a class card that is start at level 13, level up, gain anime weapon with broken ability, level up, leave game due to Dungeon Master being bad.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah. So like
I mean-
80% of my high school D&D campaign.
Level up.
I
The
mean-
game is a draw because none of you can schedule properly.
I mean, I am waiting for the next unset where we get enchantment class saga.
I'm waiting for upper and
Where would
lower
the art
class
be?
in the next upset.
There wouldn't be art.
Exactly.
But yes, as Effie mentions, no, you cannot proliferate this at all. You have to pay for it. They wanted to make sure you couldn't do that because they're cowards. Also because they're smart.
They won't let
and
you
that's not
have
a good
any
idea.
fun.
Also because
Um,
Vorinclex, but also, yes.
Yeah. So, talking about the actual card, Paladin class is kind of demonstrative of what I think classes should usually be viewed as, which is a first level that is kind of middling, but you aren't too unhappy to play it. The real meat of the card is in that second level, and then the third level is something you want to be using, but you aren't like really frothing at the mouth to get that over playing cards at around that mana cost. And with Paladin class, getting a Anthem on a already like tolerable, not great, but tolerable card is pretty good.
Yeah. I do think though that Paladin class is not a card you play before you play Glorious Anthem in a deck that wants it.
Yes.
The timing that Paladin class requires in that, basically, ideally, you play Paladin class on 1, you play an impactful 2-drop on 2, and then you spend three more mana to make the 2-drop +1 on turn 3.
There is
And
one deck I would play this before Glorious Anthem in, and I think it would be like an Aura's deck specifically.
I
Just because it has more often it's going to be playing with its mana to activate level 3, and
I
more
mean, maybe.
often
I think an Aura's
that
deck doesn't have enough threat density.
maybe.
'Cause they're more going tall as opposed to wide in Auras. So +1
I guess
doesn't
I'm
really
just
do
like
much.
I've seen it go a lot more wide recently, just because it's kind of needed to fight other decks.
I've not seen the deck
I
in a
think
while,
this
so I guess
first-
that's my issue.
That's fair.
I think this first ability is also like surprisingly good, and you won't ever see this ability like actually come up in a game, but it will come up more often than I think people initially think. Tax effects are always weird because not
If
being
they
able to
work,
see
you don't
your
notice
opponent's
it.
hand. Yeah, if they work, you can't tell because, if your opponent is looking at, lightning bolt and shock in hand and is staring down a 5 toughness creature, um and it has the, 2 mana up, you won't be able to see that they were unable to do the thing they wanted because you had this effect out. But you have like this decent effect at 1. We play cards that have bodies attached to that at 2. We play Tithe Taker and things like Death and Taxes. And then this 3 is really the meat and potatoes of this card, especially in things like weenie decks or in Death and Taxes. Being able to make your board a bit more formidable, make things a little harder to kill is pretty nice.
Yeah, it's. I don't think it's anything that's going to be like archetype defining, but it's pretty good in the decks that will want it, i.e., wide decks that use white as an aggressive venture.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yes, to be fair to our vegetarian and vegan friends, it is the tofu and potatoes card. Speaking of our next card.
Yeah.
Contact Other Plane. For 3 in a blue. Yes?
Continue.
I got confused.
Oh, I was there's like a deep cut joke about vegetarians and vegans being on another plane. Don't worry about it. It's an instant, and roll a d20. Dice. I need dice.
Cue dice arguments.
So
Yay.
Contact Other Plane. Let's figure out what dice do for this card.
Yes.
If you roll a d20 and on a 1 through a 9, so 45% of the time, you'll draw 2 cards. And then 10 through 19, so 50% of the time, you'll scry 2 and then draw 2 cards. And then the remaining 5% of the time, you'll scry 3 and then draw 3 cards. There's a decent number of cards in this set that follow this kind of 45% for a middling effect, 50% for the effect that the card is worth, and then 5% for something that is much better.
Yeah, this is like a card that if we got it this time last year, I would be like head over heels. Because back then we only had like Chemister's Insight.
Yeah, back then we
Yeah.
didn't have either of the remaster sets that both gave us really good 4-mana draw twos.
Remember Reign of Revelation?
Yeah.
Oh,
Barely.
We used to. I saw people playing Sift.
Cameo's
those
Epiphany
were
was being
both
played.
dark and great times.
Yeah.
I think
different
that
era,
Contact
really.
Other Plane isn't individually better than either Glimmer of Genius or Hieroglyphic Illumination. However, it does provide an interesting way to view both of those cards, where you can say, okay, do I use the cycling ability of Hieroglyphic Illumination enough to care about that instead of having this ability to upgrade it in certain situations? And
we've got actually some new Gladiator meta from the pioneer of many things, Cat Musi. You shouldn't be playing Hieroglyphic Illumination anymore. You should be playing Witching Well.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I've been sold on Witching Well.
That is the secret tech. Witching Well for a quick thing, because this is a very neat tech. It is just a blue mana for an artifact, and it enters the battlefield to scry 2. And then you can play 3 and a blue to draw 2 cards.
And sacrifice it. Yep.
Yeah.
Because card. It's just cards. It's like you get to have the utility of essentially drawing a card by cycling it and getting that scry 2, and then later you just like give me more cards. We've been playing the 2-mana enchantment that scries and
Thassa's something.
so doesn't
or
no.
Omen of the Sea.
Yes.
Omen of the Sea.
Point being is that we've been playing cards for a while that like enter the battlefield for effect and sacrifice for effect. So this is just the logical extreme of that. And kind of going on the draw 2 scale as far as draw 2s go, I don't think Contact Other Plane is beating other I don't think this is beating other ones out by any means, but pretty cool. Does some cool things, and sometimes you not 20.
Yeah. I think that there's
nothing wrong with playing it. Like,
this is
yes,
more often a card that is better than just a draw 2 than it is worse than it is just a draw 2, but
we have other better than a draw 2 effects.
Yeah, it's worse than Glimmer of Insight more often than it is better than Glimmer of Insight is I think the biggest problem with it.
Glimmer of Genius.
Thank you.
Glimmer of Genius. Yeah.
Yeah.
If
you didn't have Glimmer and Behold the Multiverse, then I'd be way more into this card. As is, it's cool, but it's a bit too late to actually see play that often.
Yeah, it's one of those cards where, like, if you have it and you need a slot, like, it's fine to have in. But I wouldn't say... And, like, because it's a common, crafting it is not going to be too hard on you, but
then again, all of the effects...
So are the other effects like this.
Yeah.
Many of them are uncommon, which in a really early... many of them are.
So I think it's just...
Behold and
Glimmer.
Let's not argue over this.
Common. Yeah, fair.
But yeah, I think this card is a little bit late to the party, and if it had come a bit earlier, it would have been a lot better. There's another card that will not be active until it is a bit late to the party, though, and that's Dragon Turtle.
This is a 3-mana 3/5 for 1 blue with flash. Creature type Dragon Turtle. Name?
Occupation Dragon Turtle.
occupation, Dragon Turtle. And it has the ability Drag Below. When Dragon Turtle enters battlefield, tap it and up to one target creature an opponent controls. They don't untap during their controller's next untap steps.
Okay,
So this won't come up a
aside
lot.
from the obvious fact that this is a dragon turtle and that's rad,
Mhm.
I am pretty into this card. Like 5 toughness is a lot if you hadn't noticed. This blocks a ton of stuff and it like still can get in if it needs to. I've kind of been thinking of it in a similar-ish vein to like almost adventures where like you're putting mana into it for effectively a sorcery speed effect or like a sorcery effect of tapping down a creature, and then you will later get the value of a body. And I
So
think this is good enough.
the way I've been viewing it is more in relation to good old common crippling chill, which is 3 mana to tap a creature down and then it draws a card. And instead of drawing a card here, you the next turn will get a or
Turn 5.
Turn 5 you'll
two
get
untap.
2 untaps later you'll get a 3/5 for free. And notably, if you cast this on your opponent's turn, your turtle will untap before whatever it tapped down will.
Yep.
Yes. Also, very important. Just like a very important note, this is not going to come up often, but I do think it is worth mention that it is a very interesting part of this card. Because of how it's templated, if you target a creature and you kill that creature, it doesn't tap.
Yeah, and this is not going to happen in our format as much, but this has a very good interaction with the creatures with illusion types, because targeting them with the ability causes them to sacrifice and then counter the ability, while still like, so instead of tapping both things down, instead they don't have a creature anymore.
Yeah,
and you still have the 3/5.
There's a lot of really interesting use cases with this card, and it's very, very interesting to see all of the like potential use cases out of it. As our editor noted in the chat, if you cast this and there are no creatures on your opponent's side of the board, it just taps itself. You have to have a target in order to do a lot of shenanigans with it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the reason that it works, even though it could have no targets, if it did have a target and no longer has a target, then it can't do anything else due to how magic rules work.
Although I will say that's something we haven't acknowledged. This art is great. Look at just having somewhat. Look at that face. That's just such a great face. It is about to eat that boat and kill so many people.
The dragon turtle is about to get into the creamy pirate center.
Yes, it is.
So,
speaking about
this card, I think
centers,
is just like generally good. Like, I think it's a pretty slam dunk in things like tempo, where this is like assuredly the kind of board advantage that tempo wants, where it's a tab effect that also gets you a very well statted creature later in the game for effectively free.
Yeah, absolutely. And you say effectively 3, but unlike adventures, this is just the 1 mana cost and then you're good.
Yeah. It works pretty well, and it works well to foil your opponent's plans, at the very least at the timing that they want.
Yeah. Speaking of cards with interesting timings, our next card, Imrith. We're going with Imrith.
I've been going
Imrith Desert Doom for 3 blue. It is a legendary creature dragon that is a 5/5 flying, and it has Ward 4 as long as it's untapped. And Whenever Imarith deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Then if you have fewer than 3 cards in hand, draw cards equal to the difference.
So,
Okay,
may I?
mean, sure.
Quick thing. We have talked about 10 cards so far. And 4 out of 10 and 4 out of 5 of the creatures have been dragons. Keep that in mind.
A lot of dragons.
There's a lot of
A
dragons
lot
in
of
this
good
set.
dragons. There's a lot of creatures in this set that aren't good, but many of the good cards are dragons for some reason.
Yes.
Almost like it's called
part of the,
Dungeons and
like,
Dragons.
name, yeah.
Like this
it's
card.
like they have consistent theming.
3 out of 3 dungeons are dungeons.
4 out of 5 creatures are dragons.
That is technically correct.
Math.
That's
so
correct.
Speaking
Talking
of
about
things
this
with 4
card-
and 5, I really like this card as top end for mid range and potentially in some versions of control. Like, I've been messing around with blue red dragons, and this slots right in. It's not the. It protects itself really well because Ward 4 is a lot. So, like, you're
It will
usually
typically
going to
survive your turn.
get to untap with this.
Yeah.
Um,
It will
and then-
attack once. It might not survive the attack, but it probably will
Yeah.
be able to be declared as an attacker once.
But especially if you're in like a blue-based control deck, you can play this on 5 without feeling the need to hold something up to protect it, and then from there on you can protect it if need be, and then it's going to be drawing you cards. If you top deck this late, it's going to get you back up to 3 cards in hand every time, which is a lot. And like, it's just a big body. Again, 5 toughness is a lot, and like,
Yeah.
if
And
you're able
timing-wise-
to accelerate this, like a 5 power blocker on turn 4 that your opponent can't like target with anything is going to do a lot of work.
Timing wise, for most things that will remove the Imarith, right? Either you need a initial spell to get warded, and then another spell to kill it, or you need like a 2 mana kill spell, like a Doomblade effect, and then 4 more mana. So
Ward
playing-
doesn't work that
Yeah.
way, UFO. You're
Ward-
thinking more of like
Yeah.
Yeah, you're
I
thinking
thought
of
that-
you're
I thought
thinking
Ward
Ward
was
is
the-
every
every
is
time.
every
Yeah,
spell in
ward
it.
happens every time.
I've been playing Ward wrong.
Every time.
you're
I've been
thinking
playing
of
against
like
Ward wrong.
people talking about using snakeskin veil to get around it.
Yeah.
Ward's very
also-
good.
Yeah,
the
no,
fact
well
that
then, anyway, what it means is that if you play this card on turn 5, going into your opponent's turn 5, they can only cast a 1-drop on it if they have been playing 1 land per turn. If they're going into their turn 6, they can only play a 2-drop on it, or lower, if they've been playing 1 land per turn. Which means playing Imarith on turn 5 is pretty damn safe against removal. The thing that's not safe against is them playing their own thing. So if
Well,
you're
it's safe
confident that
against
they don't have a
sorcery
threat,
speed removal.
instant, either way, either one.
Well,
Because
It's
for
safe
instant speed
until
removal,
it taps.
once it attacks,
Yeah, it's
I'm
safe
saying
until it
I'm talking
attacks,
about
but
going into their turn and go back to your turn, and now you have mana up to use
Yeah.
your interaction to stop their interaction once it attacks.
Interaction
Yeah.
in a blue deck, never.
The thing is, right, in a blue deck, tapping out can be scary, but
now it doesn't have to be, because you get a giant dragon.
Yeah. Giant dragon.
Speaking
that
of blue
pulls
interaction,
you back in the speaking of blue interaction, as we've never
our
seen
next
before,
card.
you find the villain's lair because this is a card name.
Sure
yeah, but
One
Reality
blue,
Smasher
blue.
Tatmuzi doesn't have ward because it's only spells, not abilities.
Oh no! Talking about the Cura text.
I know,
Yeah.
but Tatmuzi was talking about Reality Smasher.
Oh, yeah.
No, that's
weird.
okay.
Why are some of those only spells? Huh.
Well,
don't
that's
like that
just how that
inconsistency.
particular card was printed.
Yeah,
Good old magic design.
For
Anyway,
one
you
blue
find
blue,
the villain's lair.
you have an instant. You get to choose one. Can you foil their scheme by countering the spell? Or learn their secrets in Faithless Loot, so you draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards. Give me just a moment, I almost have it.
It's a decent card.
I
Pretty
really
decent.
like this card. This is part of like it's not a cycle, but there's a few cards like these where they start with U and then they're modal based on some sort of flavoring, and
Mhm.
I love me some Faithless Looting. Like I have played so many Arclight Phoenixes, and like this is a Faithless Looting attached to a counterspell, and
Yeah.
I love it. Like you can interact with them, and then if you don't need to interact with them, you can just like dig deeper for stuff. You can put stuff in your bin. You get to trigger something for drawing stuff. Like you get to trigger God Eternal Kefnet, I guess is the important one. But I don't know.
Or Dream
It's
Trawler.
good.
This is
Well, yeah.
this is a very good card for when you are like on turn 3 waiting for your opponent to do something so you can react to it. And
Yep.
if your opponent doesn't do anything, you are also feeling good by getting a Faithless Looting.
Yeah.
I think
It's
the
also
biggest
a
question.
counterspell.
The thing to remember
It's a
with this
counterspell
card,
that lets you do something if they don't cast anything, right? Where oftentimes if you're holding up a counter on 3 and they don't do anything, you might not have like a cantrip to play because a lot of your 4-mana draw 2s are not playable that turn. So you just sit there having effectively wasted a turn. And this lets you not just do that.
the thing to also remember is that this is a common, and I know that doesn't typically come into conversation here, but many of the like top tier counter spells disallow ionize. Those are rare crafts, and this is a common, which means if you're needing to replace a disallow in someone's deck and you're just trying to build it and you don't have one, you find the villain's lair will be perfectly serviceable.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
My question, the question I've heard a lot is like, where does this place on like a canceled tier list? And I think
tier
it goes
lists.
next to neutralize, not
Above
or below it.
neutralize. Above
I
neutralize.
put it above neutralize for sure.
But
I think
not-
it's like
not-
around saw it coming.
Above neutralize, but no higher than anything else that neutralize wasn't higher than.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the reason I like to say it's next to neutralize is because I think it's better than neutralize if you have a specific reason to want this faithless looting effect. And you have there are so many ways that you might want to use this faithless looting effect. If you are trying to just sculpt your hand in general, if you're trying to put something that's useful into the bin for a torrential gear hulk, if you're like trying to put a specific card into the bin for that, it's very good for setting up graveyard based combos. And
It's another
on
counter
the-
spell that allows you to do a specific thing depending on what your deck wants to do. And you're going to need
Yeah.
to kind of evaluate what your deck is doing to make it work within what you're doing.
on the flip side, this is technically like if you're choosing learn their secrets, it is technically card negative.
Yep.
Where things like neutralize are card equal, although cycling is not that good of an ability.
Yeah, it's interesting. And in terms of card tier lists, our next card is Esarak the Archlich. For 2 and a black, it's a 5/5 legendary creature zombie wizard. When Esarak the Archlich enters the battlefield, if you have not completed Tomb of Annihilation, return Esarak to your owner's hand and venture into the dungeon. And whenever Esarak attacks, for each opponent, you create a 2/2 black zombie creature token unless that player sacrifices a creature. UFO, you have thoughts?
I'm just gonna point out
Yes.
that this card has its name on it 3 times.
Also,
Like,
it's a
it's
Serac.
times.
Full name.
4
like
times.
the
3
person
times,
who wrote the
which does
story
not happen normally.
calls this person a Serac.
Esrak.
Which
A
is weird
Serac
because it
is
has
the
another ER
pronunciation.
in it.
I know, but a Serac is a pronunciation by Chris Perkins, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
Yeah. Esrak.
A Serac.
Serac.
A2.
A
A2
Serac.
Archlich. A2
Ace-
Look,
Archlich.
Serac.
Was
Ace
that your whole
Rarak.
setup?
Yes.
Anywho,
Beautiful.
also FX, by the way, we can't hear you in the call.
Ace Rarak.
Yes.
Aha.
Asa Rarak.
Ace
I mean-
Ace.
Anywho,
A2.
so
Moving on.
Elder Archlich.
might I
Arch
bring you
glitch.
to the glory that is rejecting Tomb of Annihilation and embracing Dungeon of the Mad Mage?
I can't believe there's only 2 dungeons.
Yeah.
Can we talk about
so,
Dungeon of the Mad Mage?
Here's the thing. A Serac is a 2-mana way to venture into the dungeon.
3 mana.
Sorry, a 3-mana way to venture into the dungeon. I'm usually playing it with like a cost reduction in play. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No,
um,
you're fine. You're fine.
It's a 3-mana way to venture into the dungeon for every 3 mana you pay.
Yes.
And what that means is that if you have a Paradox engine out and a way to make 3 mana, one of which is black, you win the game.
Always.
Yes, actually, Effie, please. This is the time to talk about that dumb
Yeah.
card.
First
Also,
up
this
is
is-
Lost Mine of Fandelver, actually.
I mean,
Well,
Lost Mine,
yeah, so-
but we should talk about
No,
all 3 dungeons.
I know, but I'm talking about
We
Lost
will
Mine
talk
first.
about 3, yeah. So,
But
the reason you
already
like
talked
Lost
about
Mine
2 of
here is
them.
because it's a way to actually just completely finish the game. It drains your opponent for 1. That's the important
Yes.
thing about Lost Mine.
Sorry,
What?
didn't we already talk about 2 of them?
Yes, we're talking
We
about
talked
Lost Mine
about
right
2
now
of them.
in this
We have
context because I have things to bring up.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yes,
I'll bring up Lost
But
Mine
we
then.
do-
Sorry.
yes. And then we
So-
can talk about Mad Mage, as we should actually read all 3 of them for purposes.
Oh, yeah,
If
we will.
I may bring up Lost Mine, because this is the dungeon that makes a Serac win with infinite mana of some sort.
Yes.
Omniscience works with it in older formats. Allurin works with it, and Paradox Engine works with it.
This
right?
is a win con for Meat Storm.
Doesn't matter. Here's the issue with it. To do 1 damage with a Serac through the Lost Mine of Fandelver, you need 14 clicks. 7 clicks. No? Wait. 8.
It depends
You
on...
need 8 clicks. 2 clicks per thing.
Yeah.
2 clicks per level. To do 20 damage with Lost Mine of Fandelver and a Serac, you need to click 160 times. That is, I believe, physically impossible to do within timers on Arena.
Yeah.
Or Modo,
For that
for that
reason.
matter.
Yeah.
For
You
that
get player
reason,
and concede.
instead, we look at a Serac for number of cards seen or filtered per click. Lost Mine of Fandelver is 2 per 8. Dungeon of the Mad Mage, however, is as follows. Is it? Yes. So the first item, you gain 1 life. You have infinite life, technically. It's cool. Dungeon level 1, scry 1. You now see 1 card. You have done 4 clicks. Goblin Bazaar, make a treasure token. That's usually what you're going to do, because you're going infinite. So you've gained 1 life, you saw 1 card, create a treasure token. Next level, scry 2. Now you've seen 2 cards for
3 cards.
3 cards for, at this point, 8 clicks. Still now a better rate than Lost Mine. Runestone Cavern, you see 2 more cards for 2 more clicks. So 5 cards for 10 clicks. Scry 3, 8 cards for 12 clicks. Draw 3.
That's going to be
12
11 cards for...
14
Yeah,
clicks.
11. Yeah, 11 cards for 14 clicks.
Versus 2 cards for 8 clicks. So, for the purposes of making your your games work when you're going infinite with a Serac in an online format. You cannot shortcut just going through the Dungeon of Phandelver. Also, Dungeon of Phandelver can only do damage equal to the number of cards left in your library, or else you do die. So there's some weird stuff there. The thing is, a Serac, while it feels like a win condition, it does and it is. It can't literally be a win condition due to the restrictions of the game we play, the way we play the game.
Yeah,
But
it
going
can't
through
be.
Dungeon of the Mad Mage is still great and still will win you the game in the same way that Lost Mine will when you're doing things with a Serac.
So notably, that time limit is only applicable in like a tournament match, and if you're playing casually, you can just keep looping the the lost mine until your opponent sees the writing on the wall that is an infinite. Um,
Yeah.
for any tournament setting, you should be using dungeon, and in the case of a thing like Paradox, you have other ways to instantly win the game, and
Yeah.
so you can use a Serac as a way to just, dig through your deck until you find a way to win instantly, and then you cast it for free. The way I'm probably going to be doing that in Paradox is with Aetherflux Reservoir, which is a card. If you're doing an artifact Paradox build, you're probably already including that, and it means that the next time you cast a Serac, you're at least gaining like 9 life per cast, and you will win by the next time you would complete a dungeon.
hmm And in Paradorks, you use either a Hoof or Kenrith, both of which will win the game in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
With Meatstorm, you use Bantu's Monument because,
Yeah.
yes.
Again,
Does
Sorry.
Meatstorm actually win? Because I thought it only made
You only
colorless
get
and red,
red
mana.
mana. Yeah.
You only
you
get
can't
colorless and red
actually do
mana.
that.
Well, you can't. So here's the thing: it depends on how you're playing the deck. In this case, I would need
play
to go
Prismite?
through. No, not we're not playing Prismite. We're doing a Shio Lotus Cobra shenanigans.
Okay.
Okay, fair.
Yeah.
I mean,
Depend. There are different ways to
Depends
set
on
up
how you're
making
doing
your depend. There are different ways to change your mana into colored mana, so that's not a concern. I would like to
But the
say
key for this, right, is that with Paradox Engine and 3 mana, you can then draw the rest of your deck and make a bunch of mana while doing so, which then sets up all your other win conditions, even if you can't physically use it as a literal win condition, despite it being able to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, just like in some decks, I don't think this is going to come up too often, but I could honestly see this in like Mono Black Control as a value engine that also in some games is a 3 mana 5/5.
Yeah, I just don't think you. I honestly think that a Serac in our format is going to be used very
Just a
little
combo
to complete
yeah.
the 2 mana annihilation and then come into play.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
think you really ever consider this for the creature
It's-
part. It's
Oh,
just
no,
the
I don't-
mana, how to keep an instant mage busy.
Yeah, for
Being
sure.
effectively 12 mana to actually get this as a creature is not great.
Yeah, no, that's
Like-
that's sure. It just I do think it's worth mentioning that there's definitely a possibility that there are going to be decks that are just like, ooh, 3 mana 5/5. Oh, I get to draw cards and make people lose life and do things. Awesome.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
there's a
Also,
world
it
that
has
if we
been
get another
surprisingly decent as just like a I have 3 extra mana this turn. I'm not going to use it on anything. I'll just play the Acerak and go 1 level deeper into Dungeon of Phandelver or the Mad Mage and get some
Yeah.
value.
I think it's really good, especially in the earlier parts of those dungeons, because you have at the third level of both of them, you have some ability that can stop a creature from dealing damage to you,
Mhm.
whether that be making a creature unable to attack or giving one -4/-0, and using those if you are in a spot which I've been in Paradox, where I just have this Acerak and I have 10 mana and I'm just like, what do I do? I can just spend 9 mana to make a creature unable to attack, and it's not the best thing, but it's another application of it.
And I'm loath to mention it, but this is another Uro or Croxa that you can use with Stifle.
Sometimes
yeah.
you just
you
need
can.
Hushbringer
Yes.
to bring in this thing.
We are one threat closer to
To
Stifle.
be fair, it is a 3-mana 5/5 at that.
That w-
It
and,
is a
and when it
3/5
attacks,
at
you
that
make it
point
2/2 unless your
yeah.
opponent hamstrings
Or, yeah.
themselves.
This,
It's
this
either
is actually a
removal
pretty
or
good
another
one for that
body.
deck.
It's
Yeah.
good as a creature if you ever get to the point where it's a creature that stays in play.
Speaking about things that are good as creatures, our next card, White, which is 1 and a black for a 3/2 zombie soldier.
That's not confusing at all.
White enters the battlefield tapped, and it has life drain. Whenever a creature damages, whenever a
Dealt
creature
damage.
dealt damage by a white this turn dies, create a tapped 2/2 black zombie creature token and exile that card.
I just want to make this a pinger and just annihilate someone with it. But also, this
That
card
sounds good.
slaps. Like,
Yeah.
this is
Yeah,
a
this is just a
3/2 for 2.
aggressive body.
Like, that trades up. It's like the life drain ability is kind of awkward at times because a lot of times you're not going to trigger it more than once, I don't think.
That's
I
fine.
think you're
Like,
also just cool triggering it
You're-
once.
But
Yeah.
you're still fine
I'm
with
cool.
that. Yeah.
I'm cool never triggering it. It's a 2-mana 3/2. I'm in.
Yeah, no.
In black.
That is true. I'm not
And
trying to
while
be down
it
on this
can't
card
block
with that.
the
It
first
just feels
turn-
a little awkward.
Like, it can't block the
way
first turn it comes
ability is
in.
structured.
But it can block turns after, where many of the 3/2s for 2 that we have in black, or in black in quotes, like Scrap Heat Scrounger, is definitely it's decently defensive, while also being very aggressive. Right?
Yeah.
Like, you
I'm
can't block the
also
first turn,
just
but you can block the next
super
turn.
into this art. Like,
Andre
This art
K.
so good.
So Andre K in chat has brought up a really interesting idea of mutating onto the white. I don't know if Porcupard is the best thing to be mutating onto it, but I
Well,
do
maybe
think
the
that
pinger.
mutate in general is really
Yeah.
good with white, because
I hadn't considered
if
that.
white is on a bigger body, it's much better. And I'm just thinking about like a green-black stompy deck that puts
Put Gemrazor on
to-
this.
So, Gemrazor,
Sawtusk.
Sawtusk, like, make this a
Oh.
4/4 or a 6/6, and your opponent just like, I have to block this, but if I do, they are winning.
Yeah, Evercool
So
Phoenix
good.
as well is an option.
Oh, Everquill, yeah.
like, this card is just really good with mutate, and
There- there's
it's
a lot
also
of fun
really good in
things.
ways that make it bigger.
And then
Yeah,
Broncos Apex of Forever is able to come from the graveyard and give it
Perfect.
make it 6/6 with trample, I believe.
You guys
Yeah.
hear the sleigh bells in the distance? Oh wait,
Oh.
no, that's
It's
that's
Not even really. I mean, Brokos is
do-
maybe
I'm
a bit
thinking of
much,
a-
but
something. I'm thinking of a white Christmas.
thinking of a white Christmas,
God
but
damn it.
actually, in the distance, all we hear is Dragonfire. Thank you for going along with me on that journey, Seismic. I was hoping someone would get it. For 1 in a red, as an additional
hit
cost
here.
to cast this instant, you may reveal a dragon card from your hand, or choose a dragon you control. Dragon's Fire deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker. If you reveal a dragon card, or choose a dragon this way, as you cast a spell, Dragon's Fire deals damage equal to the power of that card to the creature instead.
So
Um,
we talked about a lot of dragons so far.
Hmm.
But Dragon's
How many
Fire,
of them have more than 3 power?
yes. 3 of them.
All of them except Dragon Turtle.
No, 2 of
the
them.
important one.
2 of them. 2 of
Yeah,
the 4
Nadar
we've talked
and Dragon
about, but-
Turtle had
Sorry,
3.
yes. Most
But-
of them.
2 mana
But we
for 3
have-
damage to target creature or planeswalker is still on rate. And then, past that, right, the dragon, revealing a dragon from your hand, whether it be, say, a Imarith, or any of the mythic dragons from this set, any of the mythic, and any of the dragons that you might be playing previously, a Glorybringer makes this 4, a Goldspan makes this 4, Some people still play that really hard to cast Niv Mizzet. That makes it 5. The slightly less hard to cast Niv Mizzet makes it 6. You can...
I'm sorry, did you call the 5-color card easier to cast?
Yes.
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 I mean, I guess. Like, if you're playing blue-red, no, but I guess. Look, I just love Niv Mizzet Para. That card's... It draws so many cards.
I love Niv
But
Mizzet
yeah,
Reborn.
this card's just, like, good at base, and then there are ways to make it even better and scale a bit more. It's just good. Card's just good.
It's an interesting question of, like, how many dragons do you want in a deck before... Do you have in a deck before this gets, like, better than Scorching Dragonfire, for example? Like...
I think the answer is typically, like, 2. Because the exile ability of Scorching Dragonfire is, like, it's relevant, but it's not... It doesn't come up as much as just removing
it's not the reason you play the card,
is.
It is a non-zero amount of dragons, but you don't need more than 1, honestly. This is just another effect like this, and sometimes it's more damage.
Yeah.
Speaking of interesting cards that do damage, Flame Skull, which is 1 red for a creature skeleton. It is flying, cannot block, and when it dies, it's rejuvenation. Exile it. If you do, exile the top card of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may play one of those cards.
Okay, I like this card. It's not
cool.
Quite a Phoenix. I don't know how good this card is. I haven't really played with it yet. It seems fun. Like it comes back. It's a 3-power creature. It probably dies to a bit too much, and like you don't really care about the body it gives, but I don't know, I just think it's neat.
Yeah, the thing about it is it dies very well.
It is neat.
But it requires you to consistently be committed to casting it a bunch. And sometimes some decks are fine with that. Some decks do want to have that sort of late game potential. And it can be pretty useful in that particular aspect, right? But I think that the thing that Flame Skull needs to be doing is always attacking, always getting in, and the abilities on it, flying as opposed to haste, means that it's this like sort of 2-turn investment that you're needing to do every time you recast it, and it's very easy to die.
Removal actually still works quite well on it, because if you do cast it again, then it does save the opponent a turn. Like, it is if you kill the Flame Skull, it's a turn that it's not attacking.
Yeah, I guess.
And then on the flip side,
isn't an
this
inherently
not being
bad
able
thing.
to block. The fact that this pretty much only dies from your opponent spending removal on it or your opponent blocking it makes me a bit wary. Like, if you could choose when this died by way of being able to block with it, I'd be a lot more on it.
So here's the thing. I think I will be choosing when this dies. More so in the sense that I think this is a very interesting card for the aggrocrats style of deck. The fact that it doesn't have haste is a real big downside. It might be too much of a downside, but it is like another Phoenix that you sort of control when you cast it. And it having the fact where it can get other cards is also quite good. It also has
let's go on a journey.
Text, so
let's go on a journey for a second.
Yes.
Magical Christmas Land.
I'm in the journey.
Flame Skull.
Alright.
Gilded Lotus.
Okay.
Paradox Engine.
I'm listening.
3 sack outlet.
Ooh. We draw our deck.
So
Flame Skull doesn't have any timing restriction on if you can immediately cast
Yeah.
it after it dies.
you do need one other. You do need some way to make that a
Well,
kill, but yes,
it's implied that the free sack outlet gets you there.
yeah,
But
like
you know,
yeah, it's it's interesting, and it has a lot of applications with ways to sacrifice it, and I do think if there is a like good home for it, it's going to be in a like some form of Kratz deck, probably aggro Kratz, because most of the other, if you want to play a slower aristocrats build, then you probably just like you probably want to block with this. But the fact that it still gets in is pretty dang neat.
Yeah, it gets in. It does. It does the damage.
Um,
It
yeah, and it's cool that we're seeing all of these like different ways to exile the top cards of libraries and be able to cast that, and it gives you a lot of choice in what you do with it. Similarly, is you find some prisoners, which is one and a red for an instant, where you choose one. You either break their chains and destroy a target artifact, or you interrogate them and you exile the top 3 cards of target opponent's libraries. Choose one of them until the end of your next turn. You may play that card and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast it.
okay. So I put this card on the list, and I want to be. This card is not going to go into a lot of things. To be honest, this this card
Are you
is a
using this
card.
as a Stormwind con?
Maybe. Okay, listen to me.
It's a
There
very funny
is.
Stormwind con.
It is a very funny Stormwind con. The more the reason it's on here, honestly, when it comes to Stormwind cons, this is a way in red to kill without damage,
Yeah.
which doesn't seem like a lot, and it's very much a thing where it's like, yeah, but is that really what I want to be doing? But it also draws you cards in an interesting way, and also there's just a lot of decks that are really good at beating themselves.
now go on this journey with me.
All right, I'm on the journey.
We play
Journey 2.
Scheming Symmetry.
Okay.
We tutor this card to the top of our deck and draw a card,
Perfect.
or we have this in hand. Either way, we play Scheming Symmetry. We get this card in hand somehow.
Get
We
their
then-
best card.
Interrogate our opponent. We get a free Scheming Symmetry, free being relative, and
We still have to put Scheming Symmetry in our deck.
true. Listen, Scheming Symmetry is good for many things. None of them are in Gladiator.
Yeah, that's not the worst application of them, and I've played some bad tutors before.
I
Yeah.
will say, honestly,
We all have.
the most relevant part of you find some prisoners is the fact that it is an instant. There will be
Yep.
times where my opponent scries something to the top, or there are cards, especially one that we got recently, that tutors to the top. So
or shows the
Not-
top card of the library.
shows
in
top
some
card.
way.
Yeah. So I'm not going to say that this is a card that gets into a lot of red decks. It gets into maybe an red deck, if that. But this is just one of the cards that the more cards we get like this, that is just like, it is a way for Storm to win without dealing damage, and not in the color that
Really,
you
without
normally...
a win con.
Yeah, well, it's like, so here's the thing: without damage,
Also, it
and
destroys an artifact.
it also can destroy an artifact.
Good,
But like,
right? Like, it
so-
has extra
yeah.
utility if you need
Ab-
it.
Yeah, instant
Absolutely.
speed,
There's-
destroy target Embercleave is not bad.
yeah, destroy target
Yeah.
Embercleave. That's gonna come up. Destroy target. Like, so many people are playing
Destroy target
the.
Dancing Sword.
We talked about the
Stone
3/2,
Coil.
the 3/2 that
Hold
comes
up.
back.
I have to remember something.
Yeah,
Scrap Heap Scrounger.
I believe
That's-
on the tirade that I was on about borderless cryptic command, full art cryptic command,
Yeah.
one of you said the word.
no, we didn't. Chat did.
No, one of you
I-
said the word.
I think Joker Boney did.
Okay, all right.
Did
I
we?
don't think
Oh.
Chat definitely
I did.
did.
Chat definitely did.
I
I
know-
don't think we
I know
did.
I don't think we need to
Chat
pay penance. I'm just saying it now
Yeah.
because my mind went that direction.
Hmm.
The sacred word, Mink.
Well,
But
the
for
sacred
now-
pair of words.
The sacred pair of words. But currently, the sacred pair of words is interrogate them. Because sometimes you're going to cast this card and you're just going to be like, haha, I exile your library. Sometimes you're going to cast this card and it does nothing. I just want to be very clear that sometimes this card is going to do nothing. But sometimes...
Speaking of cards that can sometimes do nothing, but are usually going to be better.
There's actually not
I
really
guess.
a way that this card can do nothing. But
Yeah.
after you
anyway,
free these
Mink
you
prisoners,
might not be able to target your opponent.
you see a pair of goblins.
Yes, you see a pair of goblins. For 2 and a red, instant. Choose one. Charge them. Creatures you control get +2/+0 until end of turn. Or befriend them. Create 2 1/1 red goblin creature tokens.
Befriend them.
This is actually a pretty interesting effect because the befriend them ability is instant speed make 2 1/1 non-human tokens. Goblin type matters for some decks, but the fact that they're not humans matters for Winota. And that's in a lot of the Boros aggro decks that we've seen. In fact, I'd say most of them should be running Winota as their top end. So having a way to instant speed make two non-humans, right, will help you enable Winota's shenanigans. And then a Trumpet Blast effect is something that we've kind of wanted in those really go wide Boros token strategies. And the issue with a Trumpet Blast is we have at least one on Arena already
Well, I think
in
we
the
have
form
2.
of
We
at least one.
We have
We have
actual
Burn Bright and I
actual-
think actual Trumpet Blast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we have both.
Burn
of
Bright and
those.
Trumpet Blast might be the two. But the fact that this is a Trumpet Blast, that if you don't have a board to pump, you just make 2 1/1s. Also, notably, remember, Trumpet Blast just buffs attacking creatures. I've seen
this is
people
a burn
really get
bright.
themselves with Trumpet Blast before.
It is important that this is
Yeah.
a burn bright and not a trumpet blast. Thankfully. Cool.
Yes.
And
That
yeah,
is...
and
You have
I hope they stay with
reminded
that.
me of some old memories. We're
I
not
think
talking about
the
that.
big thing that has been stopping a Burn Bright from seeing play in like mono red is really that fact that this card is not this card, but Burn Bright is
Oh, we have
absolutely
3.
dead on an empty board.
We have 3.
This
We
is
have
not-
the third one is the dinosaur one.
Oh,
Dinosaur
yeah.
Stampede.
Gives dinosaurs
Yeah.
trample and
well
other
as that
and
also,
trumpet
yeah.
blasts. Yeah.
I
All right.
remember loving
Um,
that card. Like
Anyway,
3
you see
years
a
And,
pair of
back.
goblins is better than all of them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Z Pair of Goblins is insane because its alternative is if this would do nothing because you're on an empty board or you don't care about your creatures, you've gotten into a board stall, anything like that, you still have this fail state of getting not the best spell, but still a good spell. Like instant speed 2 goblins for 3 mana is not bad.
Yeah, no, for sure. Just in general, there's going to be a lot of times that comes up and it's just going to be good. Speaking of things that are come up and be good, our next card is Froghemoth, which is 3 green, frog horror with trample and haste, and it is a 4/4.
So I noticed something about the art of this card.
How many
I-
arms does it have?
No, not arms.
I just realized something.
There aren't arms.
What's
I
up?
don't think.
There's a pair of legs sticking out of the mouth on the right hand side. I hadn't seen that before.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's Thalia.
No, I was going to say how many arms and how many people does this Froghemoth have?
But Frog
Yeah.
Hemoth, have any of you
Dang, I
played the
got beat to
Ratchet
the
and
Thalia
Clank
joke.
series?
How many? Sorry, what?
The Ratchet and Clank
Uh,
series.
Yeah.
Not enough to know what you're talking about.
No.
This looks very much like most of the enemies that exist in that game. They're
Yeah,
all like weird three-eyed things with too many appendages.
Oh god, I just realized that on top was its eyes. I thought you see
Yeah,
that
those are
dark
eyes.
part below the eyes? I thought that was the eye.
Nope.
I think that's a nostril of some sort.
Oh, I hate that.
Yeah.
To finish reading this card, whenever Froghemoth
Uh,
deals combat damage to a player, exile up to that many target cards from their graveyard and put a +1/+1 counter onto Froghemoth for each creature card exiled this way, and you gain 1 life for each non-creature card exiled this way.
The way I've learned to describe this card is not as a 4/4 with trample and haste for 5, but rather a 6/6 with trample for 5 that when it enters, it hits your opponent for 4. And that's pretty good.
Pretty large.
I mean, sure. I think that this is pretty good. What the decks that are gonna really want this are, I think, mostly gonna be like black-green mid-range decks where you just have, all the removal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've faced
this
against
is
a few of
very
them,
good-
and it's kind of infuriating sometimes to think they just cast their 5th kill spell. Surely this creature is gonna stick now, and the answer
Surely.
continues to be no.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a very good payoff for spending all of your previous turns playing like 1-for-1 removal.
Yeah.
And you can even see that demonstrated on the card, because the first one that's killed is in its mouth, the second is in its arms, and it's about to kill that creature right there.
Yeah, or,
Heavy
miraculously the one
quotation
in...
marks around arms.
Though, I think this might be the swallow ability on a monster, so that person is still alive, and if it does enough
Maybe.
damage inside, it's going to throw it up.
Maybe.
I don't
Oh,
want to
I
think
love
about
that
that person
mechanic
being
in
alive
D&D.
still.
I,
Well,
I
that's
do
how
love that mechanic.
swallowing in D&D 5e works a lot of times.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Man, I
think
need
that
to play. I
what
need to run more D&D.
I
one
do
day.
want to bring up the fact that green has the best green mechanic. I think is haste. I think right now haste is kind of the most valuable mechanic for me to see on a green creature, and green doesn't have any good 5-drop hasty creatures, and this is the first one that is at the very least theoretically good and also has haste and is at 5 mana.
Yeah.
Which is definitely not nothing. And I really like the fact that I can now go from Questing Beast into Froghemoth into Vorinclex and just have, I'll say it, and have just hasty threats the entire game.
Okay,
by the
so
way,
I-
Questing Beast is 2 green for a legendary creature beast. As Vigilance, Haste, Death Touch. I don't know if I said its stats, but it's a 4/4. And it has can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. Combat damage that would be dealt by creatures you control can't be prevented. And whenever it deals combat damage to an opponent, it deals that much damage to target planeswalker that player controls.
Do you remember the set number?
171? I think it's 171. Or it's a 371 as its extended art.
The promo one is like 370 something. I think. I don't remember. I haven't looked at this in a bit.
Anyway,
I just still
now
really like Soul Swallower, but
yeah,
not
we
this.
have
don't bring that card up again.
Oh, we have really good haste threats from like all of 4 and up, and it kills people.
372 is the
372
promo art.
Yeah. The next card we're talking about, by the way, is Ranger class. For 1 and a green, it is
win the game?
enchantment class.
Basically.
Yes. Yeah, it's pretty good. Whenever Ranger class enters the battlefield, create a 2/2 green wolf creature token. Then, for 1 and a green, level 2. Whenever you attack, put a +1/+1 counter on target attacking creature you control. Target attacking creature. whenever you attack. Okay, now you can. And for 3 and a green, level 3, you may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may cast creature spells from the top of your library.
So
This is the 2 mana
let's
2/2.
let's talk about the average use case of this card, right? So
All
we're in a
right.
green deck. We pay 2 mana. We play the Ranger class, right?
Mhm.
Probably turn 2.
Okay, yeah,
Probably
likely.
turn 2.
Probably turn
Yes.
2. Then the next turn we level it up. We may have a little mana floating, but that doesn't matter because now we're attacking with a 3/3 wolf at least.
All right. Like
Next
it,
turn,
like it.
Without any other cards coming in, you're now attacking with a 4/4 wolf at least. And
And you also get
what if you're playing any other creature, right? The 4/4 wolf is a problem that needs to be answered pretty quickly, or else it's going to kill their opponent. But also, the Ranger class kind of needs to be answered pretty quickly, or else every creature you play afterwards is going to quickly become a threat as well. Even some random 1/1 dork that you no longer need because you have the Ranger class out.
yeah, like
Yeah.
And
it
then
just sits
level
there
3
accumulating a ton of value.
Level 3, if it wasn't already too busy making your combat really good, makes it so you can find more creatures to make good in combat as well.
Yeah,
I find it
It's really good.
I find it really funny that what is generally considered to be the least generically powerful class in D&D is by a pretty wide margin the best class in Magic and potentially the best card in this set. Like it's
Yeah.
just
It's up there.
so much value. It makes all of your creatures into must answer threats, and then it lets you cast creatures off the top of your deck all on one card. Like this card is
And
pretty
then
much
if you have
always
4
a
mana when you
3-for-1.
play the Ranger class, right? Like if you play on 4,
Yeah,
you can play it and then activate and then put a counter on whatever thing you can attack with that turn.
yeah. Like
yeah.
it's so good. Imagine putting a count. So turn 1 and 2, you like play a tap land one of those turns, and the other turn you play questing beasts, not questing beast, Lovestruck Beast's Adventure, the
Mhm.
one that
Alright.
makes a 1/1. Turn 3 you play Lovestruck Beast. Turn 4 you play Ranger class, activate Ranger class, and then swing in for 6.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, how does your opponent win? Because even if they take care of Lovestruck Beast, you still kill them.
You still have 2 bodies at that point.
You still have 2
Yeah.
bodies, both of which like become surprisingly powerful if either attacks. Like, and
Yeah.
then you get
Yeah, just need to
Later
remember to
on.
not
futures.
don't buff up the 1/1.
Yeah, just
Yeah,
don't
do not buff up the 1/1.
unless you're gonna kill them with it.
Yeah,
Speaking of cards that we're gonna kill people with, for green, Werewolf Pack Leader. 2 mana 3/3. It is a human werewolf with keyword. Well, special ability
ability word.
word.
It's actually not.
Pack tactics.
This is a set word.
well,
It's-
an
it's-
ability word. That's an ability word.
Yeah,
Yeah.
ability
It's an
words.
ability word.
This is
Not-
special ability word. Whenever a werewolf pack leader attacks, if you attacked with creatures with total power 6 or greater this combat, draw a card. So this is like slightly smaller ferocious, but slightly bigger. What's the other one?
Slightly bigger,
It's smaller
ferocious,
than-
slightly
Yeah,
smaller,
bigger-
indomitable.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you.
Good old
I-
cons block mechanics.
You-
That was not
What
that
one
mean
is 8 power, the other is 4 power.
Yeah, Fate.
Yeah.
I think that's from Fate Reforged.
So
Maybe.
cons
Sorry.
and fate had ferocious.
I don't
okay.
know if
Then-
Yeah.
Dragons
Right,
had,
and then dragons had
Indomitable.
I think it's
whatever one.
indomitable.
Yeah,
Whatever
it's
Indomitable
called.
sounds
Check it
right.
now.
Okay.
whatever the set was when what's it when
It's
I just remember there was a set
It's
formidable.
Okay.
Formidable. There we
Mhm.
go.
Thank you.
Anyway,
There's also more
weird
text on
timeline
this card.
set.
Yes,
Um,
it also draws a card if you've met the pack tactics. And then also for 3 and a green until end of turn, Werewolf Pack Leader has base power and toughness 5/3. Gains trample. That isn't human.
And isn't a human.
Yes.
Which-
Isn't a human.
The isn't a human text won't matter most cases, but you know,
Can we mutate onto
everyone-
this when it isn't a human, and then
Yes.
hit the mutate?
Correct. And then it
Yes.
stays.
yes.
Huh.
It
This
also
came
means you have a way to trigger Winota off this.
what I
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
don't understand. I'm not sure I fully know is how the power toughness change is gonna work. If you change its power and toughness to 5/3 until end of turn, and then make it no longer 5/3, but instead mutate over the card.
the
The mutate
gives
has
that
the
new,
more recent timestamp.
yeah.
But at the end of turn, it then says, "Well, you should no longer be this toughness. You should be back to 3/3, right?"
No,
Well,
it
it'll
just
then
says you
go
are
back
no
to
longer
the
this
printed
power.
toughness, which is
Yeah.
now whatever's on top.
Okay.
It's just like how cards refer to card name.
Yeah.
It does, yeah. Same
Anyway,
similar
mutate's a
idea.
weird mechanic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pack
Yeah.
Leader is a good
Speaking of
card.
mechanics.
And may I just
Um,
note, right? I would say, let's say we got Pack Leader as a 2-mana 3/3.
All right, we've got that. So
Okay,
I believe you.
listening.
That would be good enough.
Yes.
Yes. We have that card in front of us. Yes.
I don't know if I'd play
And then it
that
just
in
does
all,
other stuff.
like mono green decks, but I certainly would play it in some of them. It'd
Yeah, but
be
you play
a
in
good
Stompy at
addition
least.
to. Yeah. If you're playing the 3/3 that the 2/2 with a +1/+1 counter
Barkhide
that you can
Troll.
remove to give it hex. Yeah, Barkhide Troll. If you're playing that, you probably play this alongside it. Yeah.
It's just really good stats early, and
Yeah.
the fact that it's 3/3 means that Pack Tactics will trigger pretty consistently. If you want to theorize good Pack Tactics timings, Pelt Collector often will do it most often,
Yeah.
but the other way you can do it is like a there's many
turn one
ways
dork,
to
Yeah.
turn 1 dork, turn 2 this, turn 3 some questing
some
beast.
haste.
Some
Yeah, questing beast.
Which, for your information, is 2 green for an enchantment that any player may play creature cards with converted mana cost 3 or less without paying their mana cost into as though they had flash. Moving on.
Questing a Lurin Beast. I think it's fairly reasonable to say that Pack Tactics, if you're playing your cards right, Pack Tactics might trigger on turn 3, and then probably should trigger on turn 4.
Yeah,
Mhm,
especially
mhm.
if you're playing an
Um,
aggressive strategy.
And I
Also
think
works pretty well. Pack Tactics, I think, works pretty. No, does Pack Tactics not like Bolt Hound, or does it like Bolt Hound?
Doesn't like
it doesn't work well with Bolt Hound.
Yeah,
because
it doesn't work the way you want it to.
because of that intervening if, it checks both on attempting to put it onto the stack and at resolution. So
Mhm.
it
Just
doesn't
doesn't
get
go on
put
the
onto the
stack.
stack because Bolt Hound's ability hasn't resolved yet. But yeah,
Difference.
like curving this
It
into like
Difference. It does work with we 2 and a white 1/3
Augusta.
Augusta.
Yeah.
Because Augusta
The-
is attacking creatures get
Yeah.
1/+0.
Yeah. The,
Ooh.
It is-
well, it's actually no. It's
Yes.
tapped creatures get +1/+0.
Sorry.
yeah.
Yes. All right.
So
You're yes.
this I don't know if we have quite the fixing for it yet.
Also,
We
Pack
might,
Leader turving into On-Crop Crasher is just like chef's kiss.
Yeah,
Yes.
like
That is
if
the
you have
world
the
I want
fixing
to
to
live
make
in.
one drop Pack Leader on Crop Crasher work,
Or
you kind of just win.
Arnie, or
Yeah.
I mean, if you have one
Insert
drop, Bolt
red
Hound still
3
does
with
work,
haste.
right?
Yeah, if you have a
Yeah.
1, this works. It works fine. Um, like Pack Leader is good, and
Yeah.
drawing a card is honestly just a cherry on top of an already pretty insane creature. Um, I don't know how often you're going to use that 4-mana ability, but when you do, you're going to be really happy that it's there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like every the fact that we're just kind of happy with it as a 2-mana 3/3, and then each ability is, instead of being downside like some cards that are like, say, Lovestruck Beast, um everything else is gravy on top, is just great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Speaking of
I
cards
don't
that have interesting text,
I don't know how to make interesting
and
text is how I put it.
maybe it's gravy all the way through, and we're looking for what we're putting the gravy on. Our next card is Bard class. For red and a green, it has the base text. Legendary
Weird.
creatures you control enter the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on them. Then, red and a green, level 2. Legendary creatures you cast cost red green less to cast. This effect only reduces the colored mana you pay. Then, for level 3, for 3 red green, whenever you cast a legendary spell, exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play them this turn. So, the main reason I'm saying this is definitely it feels like this is all set up, but why is my concern.
Oh yeah, I
So
honestly, I kind of think that if this had been in Esper, like if it was literally Esper colors for the same effects, it would be a little bit more like, that's kind of more where
yeah,
Gladiator wants to be, because Gruul doesn't typically care as much about both legends and also um
like any
many
of
of
the
these
other text
levels.
on this card. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So
the text is weird.
I think
Like,
that
it's
there
cool, right?
yeah,
It's
there's
cool, like,
two
to do it.
there's two reasons why I put this onto the list of cards we're talking about. The first is because I think it provides a really interesting setup for a deck, and the second is because I think it slots somehow into my favorite deck in existence, which is 5-color Niv range. Um,
Yeah, that's true.
Makes
like
your
so
Niv Mizzet
Niv range
cost Esper colors.
has-
Also
Alright,
does work
Yeah.
pretty decently in Berkey loops, I think.
yeah.
maybe.
Niv range has so many legends, and this being like just a 2-mana enchantment to make all of my legends one bigger is not bad, like in the first place. Like, it makes things like Joyra unable to be hit by lightning strike. It lets my Niv Mizzet go from probably the biggest creature on the battlefield to definitely the biggest creature on the battlefield. It lets a lot of things that are,
Rada.
as they are, decent go to quite good. And then I think that Red Green Legends is a deck that might be able to exist at some point. I don't know when that will happen, but I think the more aggressive Red Green Legends we get, the more that second level matters, because, you know, the only thing stopping us from having a game where we go turn 2 Bard class, turn 3 activate Bard class, and then play
A 3-drop.
Dahlia, Rada, Grumgully, but not in that order, in the opposite order. Is only the thing holding us back in that sense is a density of Gruul legends.
Mhm.
And we don't have quite enough Gruul legends that are playable right now, but I think we are getting closer and closer every set.
There's also a few
And
that aren't played as much.
yeah,
Because we have
and
3-mana Rada, but we also have 4-mana Rada.
yeah, Like,
there is
we have
also
a lot of potential options.
there is also honestly a possibility for like a Nile Legends deck right now.
Also,
yeah.
remember, Bard class reduces Planeswalkers.
Yes, Bard class
Oh!
reduces Planeswalkers. I don't know
Legendary
if that's
spells.
white.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
just
Oh.
creatures.
Mana neutral Donmarie.
And
Mana neutral.
Bard class does do interesting things with Joda. Because
yeah,
Joda is a
Joda
Fist of Sun's ability.
lets you cast any legendary spell for
Any
Esper.
spell, but yes, but any
Well,
legendary spell
and
for
we had-
Esper.
Legendary
only
spells
reduces
with this
legendaries,
specifically.
Which
Joda with Bard class lets you cast any legendary spell for Esper. Like, I think once we get to the density that you can go turn 2 Bard class, turn 3 activate Bard class, play 2 legends,
yeah, that
we
would be
will
good.
be at that point. Like,
Yeah,
that
and
will make Bard class a very good card in what probably will at that point be a very good deck. We're not there yet, but I feel like we're closer than we think.
I don't know. I
mhm,
think we
mhm.
should talk about Nile Legends after this stream.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nile Legends might be an actual thing. At the very least,
After-
if it
After,
doesn't
Yeah,
care
and, like,
that much
the-
about white and cares more
The
about red
base
green.
card, I think,
Yeah.
of Nile Legends going forward is gonna be Minsk. I think that's how you pronounce it, right? Minsk?
Minsk.
Beloved Ranger?
Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna
Minsk.
say our beloved goblin lover in chat, Mink, but no, it's Minx.
Minsk. Beloved Ranger.
Minsk.
Let's take a look at this art first, because I need to talk about this hamster.
This hamster.
I love
I
Boo.
Effie, I know you say you don't have the tokens, but can you see? Is Boo available?
I think
Hell
Boo
yeah.
should be available.
Is
Have a boo.
oh
There's a boo.
yeah!
Oh,
Go for the
adorable.
eyes.
Anyway, so 3 mana for 4/4 tough stats, right? It's not literally a 4/4, which means a little bit worse, but it also makes a token, which, is also pretty good. The basic idea here
These are
is
both legendary.
that you're paying 3 mana and you're getting a thing in, and then that ability is not like crazy.
What
but
is
it's also-
the ability?
The ability
Your
is for
UFO?
X until end of turn, target creature you control has base power and toughness XX, and also gets the giant creature type, but only as a sorcery, and that's kind of what kills it in a lot of the usages that people might be thinking of initially. Because
Man, if this got around Battle of Frost and Fire and Realm Cloak Giant,
just like until end of turn,
Like,
just
yeah,
zero
this was-
zero everything.
oh no,
it still
well,
can get
1/1.
around Realm Cloak Giant as long as you're the one casting it.
Oh no!
Yeah.
ooh. All right,
Zero.
all right.
Your board.
Well, no,
Cast
no,
Realm
1.
Cloak Giant.
You need to make
No.
sure your creature survives.
Oh right,
Well,
base
yeah,
power toughness.
'cause-
Right, the mirror
yeah.
entity thing.
Yeah,
So you do have to pay 1 for each of your creatures outside of that. Yeah.
But you get around Battle of Frost and Fire and Realm. All right.
You don't get around Battle of Frost
your
and
own.
Flame because you don't have sorcery speed like
Well,
priority
be
at that
your
time.
own. Again, it only works for you playing your own things.
Well, okay, but even with Battle of Frost and Fire, that triggers at the beginning of your main phase before you get.
I thought
Sorcery
the
speed
first. I thought
priority.
no. The first step is the Wrath.
Is it?
Yeah.
The first step is Wrath. That's why it's good.
The second step is
yeah.
draw cards when you cast big things.
Okay.
sorry,
That is
Scry
not what
3.
this card is going to be used for. But that is a funny niche thing that might come up once.
Yeah.
More importantly, it is a mana sink to make a huge thing, and it gives you a 1/1 token. So
Yeah, it's
depending
got good
on the
stats,
games,
and then like the ability is nice.
depending on the games, you might just be like turn 3 Binks, turn 3. Ooh, bless you.
Thank you.
It's Nez.
Turn 2, turn 4 attack for 7, and Boo has trample. It also has haste, so this is a good top deck. Like this is if you have like 7 mana, you play Minsk and then Minsk. We're gonna go with Minsk. You pay the other 4 into making Boo a 4/4 and attacking. So this is just like worst case of Fireball.
Yeah, it's like a Fireball with 3 hit to pay in as opposed to just
Yeah.
1.
Yeah, this like point being is that it has a way to kill when it's played, which
Yeah.
makes it a very good top deck for most decks.
Now talking about good top decks.
Sorcerer class is a pretty good one for blue and a red. It is another enchantment class. I also think we haven't mentioned this up to this point, so I'm going to say it now. You can only activate the level ability as a sorcery. I don't think I've said that
Mhm.
yet.
Yeah, we
But-
haven't. So
Okay.
yeah, good
It
to
enters
know.
the battlefield. You draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards. It's our good friend Faithful Saluting again. Then, for blue and a red, level 2. Creatures you control get tap. Add blue or red. Spend this mana only to cast an instant or sorcery spell or gain a class level. Why is that the wording? Okay.
Yeah.
And for 3 blue red, level 3, when you cast an instant or sorcery, that that spell deals damage to each opponent equal to the number of instants or sorceries you've cast this turn. Neat.
Weird.
It's
So
Storm?
I was really excited for this card because the idea that like if you're in like a blue red X tokens deck,
Alright.
letting all of your tokens then tap for the next token spell or the next cantrip that you play sounds like a really good idea.
And then you made me play it.
And then I made UFO play it to test out my theory, and it didn't work.
By the way,
it
just
turned
advertisement. I have a way on stream that Seismic used to force me to play a deck, which is how made me play it works in that sentence.
yeah.
Perfect.
But the point is, I think it's really hard to find a deck that both wants this faithless looting effect on its base, and then also has both enough utility creatures in order to utilize the blue-red, the second level, and then also enough spells to cast off of those to actually utilize that mana.
Okay, hear me
Part of
out.
the issue with it is that it's not an instant or sorcery spell that's doing the effect, which
Yeah,
means
yeah.
all the creatures that care about seeing you cast instants or sorceries aren't going to do it.
Yeah.
Like, the only 2 quote-unquote pyromancer effects that really care about this are Saheeli and Shark Typhoon.
Hey, what's it called? Both of the white ones care about this, technically.
Kaikar doesn't.
Oh yeah, Kaikar. Wait,
Sorry,
does
not
Kaikar, I
Kaikar,
think-
not Kaikar. Kaikar is just Kai. What's it called?
On Arena?
Are you thinking
Yes.
Hero of Precinct 1?
Hero Precinct 1 and the one that makes spirits. It's second spell.
Clarion's-
Okay, I guess technically.
Yeah, both the Clarion Spirits have actually been really good for me.
Yes.
Yeah, Clarion Spirit's pretty good, yeah.
And
Yep,
and
I
Hero
agree.
Hero is increasingly getting better. The more sets that have these dumb multicolored cards, maybe not this one. Although I will say this one does have an interesting sort of play in some storm builds where you're already playing certain cards anyway, where it's like, yeah, I'm already gonna play this Electromancer. Sometimes it dies, sometimes it doesn't. And if it gets to reduce my spells by 2 instead of 1, even if it's only the first spell that it reduces by 2, I'm fine with that. And like,
Yeah.
it's 5 mana, but sometimes at level 3 is going to be something that I want. I guess my biggest issue with it for Storm, for either build, the Treasure version or the Grixis Graveyard version, is that this only puts 2 cards in my graveyard instead of 3, like Faithless Looting or You Find the Villain's Lair does.
Yeah.
Which
Or,
is
It doesn't
Cathartic
put itself in
Reunion.
the yard.
yeah.
And the issue I had with it when I was playing it is that, again, Sorcerer class is card disadvantage, right? So you want the rest of the levels to do something, and they don't really do much. And if you're just wanting to dig through your deck a bunch, you
There are better
have
ways to do that.
Thrill Discovery, you
Yeah.
have Tormenting Voice, you have Cathartic Reunion, just to name a few in mono red. If you're also playing white, you have Thrilling Discovery. And so it's just, there's so many cards that both have the instant and sorcery type before that kind of go into a deck like this before Sorcerer class in my eyes, if you want that type of selection.
Yeah. I do. This is the card that I'm most sad you can't cheat on the level ups, because if you could cheat on the level ups to get to level 3, that would be such an interesting card
Yeah,
for a
level
deck.
3 being 5 mana kinda
Well, okay.
honks.
Level 3 being 9 mana
Mhm.
total to get to, because I was thinking about it, right? Like,
Yeah.
okay, you're fine spending 2 mana to Faithless Looting. You are fine to do that. That is a card that is something that I would play. I would play blue red. Just draw 2 cards, discard 2 cards. Sure, I'm in, right? Like, but then you have to pay 7 mana to get to something relevant, and it's 3
Yeah.
blue, blue, red, red, and anything you've done up to that point only technically helps to make it a kill. It requires too much,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
I think also seeing
Lightning,
all these effects just reinforces in my eyes how that Faceless Looting is not powerful because of the first cast, but because of the flashback.
Possibly.
yeah.
That's fair.
Lightning, you put this card on the list.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued to
Um,
know your thoughts.
I mean, I've already said it. I really like Faceless Lootings. And like I play a lot of blue-red decks with a decent density of creatures where this like has some value where you don't necessarily get the most out of being able to tap your creatures for mana, but it is just a decent first level. The second level does some amount of stuff, and then the third level doesn't really factor into my calculations for this card. Um, and I'm honestly not 100% on this still. I don't know if the 2 mana Faithless Looting is actually as worth it as it feels, but I like enough of what this card is doing to at least be giving it a shot right now.
That's fair. Also, just in general, like, if there is a deck that can end up using that final level to great effect, having this is a nope, never mind. This is a class, not a saga. Never mind. Goodbye.
Yep.
Can't get this
This
with
doesn't.
no, Search for Glory is what I was gonna mention, but no, it doesn't work.
Hmm.
Card
You
is
ever
Alright.
only
have
Unfortunately.
card is only very good.
you ever have that like really cool feeling when you manage to get like an equipment or some sort of ability onto a creature that gives it both death touch and first strike, making your opponent have such a
What if
hard
you?
time figuring out how to make their blockers work?
I do. I just wish I had it all the time with one card.
Well, now you can! Triumphant Adventurer. It's white. It's white black for a 1/1 human knight. It has
Always had
death
death
touch.
touch. Always.
Always
Has
has death touch, and then as long as it's your turn, Triumphant Adventurer has first strike. And whenever Triumphant Adventurer attacks, venture into the dungeon. So all that discussion we had with Nadar and Nadar's timings on doing things, Triumphant Adventurer gets to do that because it does get on ETB, so it's the same timings. Complete a dungeon by turn 5. Likely.
Mhm.
And it's in
No?
fact also
Yes.
the same turn timings because this comes down on turn 2 but
Yeah,
doesn't have an
that's
ETB venture. Yeah.
Yep.
yeah.
And then
So 5
let's
or 6
say
depending on what you want to do.
we throw a dancing sword onto Triumphant Adventurer, right? It's now a
It's a 3/2
3/2 first strike death touch.
Alright, I'm listening. I like it.
4 creatures need to block Triumphant Adventurer without first strike. Obviously, if first strike on the other side comes into play, it's a little bit harder.
Yeah.
But 4 non-first striking creatures need to block Triumphant Adventurer before it starts taking damage from them. And even without buffs, Triumphant Adventurer needs to be blocked by 2 things and kills one of them. Whichever
like-
one,
Yeah.
like
Whichever one's best for you. It
Yeah.
does it.
The fact that this gets so good with any amount of like increase in stats for literally any reason makes it just progressively more unblockable. Or at least it's almost impossible to be punished for attacking with this.
it's a very weird way to say menace.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
and like if you stick like an anthem out or play humiliate after this, like any way to pump this up incidentally, which white and black have a lot of ways to do that. makes this
I
card
just-
kind of
Skullduggery.
broken.
I just
Yeah,
want to slap all the Skyclaves on this. I want to see someone find a way to block it and kill it in blocking.
Yeah, like
I mean, Maul of the Sky
But-
Claves on Triumphant Adventure is I don't
It's
think
kind of
combat
redundant.
ever goes. Well, it's a little redundant because you get first strike twice, but you get first strike permanently, which means you have first strike on blocks.
Yeah,
And
and
then
Yeah.
also
Maul
who's gonna
gives-
block with 5 flyers?
How are they gonna block with 5 flyers?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no.
like,
Oh, that's what I want. I made a joke back in Ixalan at my LGS because I was playing a lot of the 2-mana 2/2 that has flying and menace, and I was just
Sky
like,
Terror?
all right, yeah,
Yeah.
Sky Terror. And it's just like, all right, how many times is this creature going to be blocked? And I kept account over the time I played that deck, and it was not often. That card
Yeah,
is just like in this card, just like it's on the same level, right? It has first strike and death touch, and it's just like you are never blocking this.
and
And-
then with that in mind, you actually get the. I think that going into Dungeon of the Mad Mage with this is not the worst idea. It's not great, but it's not the worst idea because
Well, I think the minus
do
4
it.
minus O
This-
from Lost Mine of Fandelver does actually come into play somewhat relevantly here.
yeah,
as well.
and so it's like
Mm.
this. I feel confident in saying that if I have a slightly slow game, I can attack with Triumphant Adventure for 9 turns. Like,
Mhm.
Yeah.
I've seen
or-
board stalls like that. Just keep
Or-
going. Like,
Keep going.
FE? What are you saying?
What's up?
I mean, like with Vandelva, just stick a 1/1 counter on it. Like just
Yeah,
Yeah.
it
Oh,
becomes
oh, I
a
hadn't even
2/2.
right.
thought about that.
Yeah.
Let me vomit real quick.
On the second attack. Sorry, on the third attack, you get a +1/+1 counter on this, and it becomes even harder to deal with.
Oh
Yeah.
God. Oh man,
But-
that hurts.
I'm sorry. I'll go away again. Now.
No, thank you. That's so good. It hurts.
I didn't think about that. I'll be honest.
Oh no.
Yeah, no, that's where my mind was at immediately, honestly. That's where I was like,
Oh, God.
yes.
I mean, I say
Yes.
this only because it happened to me in my first draft game of this set, and I very
Oh,
nearly rage
no.
quit.
Oh.
I was like, I came
Oh,
back into
no.
Magic, and this is what
No.
happened to me. Like, maybe
Yeah.
it's a sign.
Speaking of
draft
things that
more
will hurt you a
Dragonfire.
lot,
Yeah.
Eye of Vecna hurts you a bit.
a lot,
it's
a
two
lot
That
of
mana for
art is something.
It's tasty.
It's-
It's 2 mana for a legendary artifact, and when it enters the battlefield, you draw a card and lose 2 life. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, you may pay 2 mana. If you do, you draw a card and you lose 2 life. It's a colorless Phyrexian arena that you have to pay mana for,
Hmm.
but that's still Phyrexian arena.
I will say, in this set, we've gotten 2 Phyrexian arenas, and this is the fact that the colorless one is the one that's a bit iffy is kind of interesting to me personally.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know, this card's cool. It's an artifact, which means it's probably going to do some shenanigans.
Yeah, I was thinking about this, like, this isn't the worst egg I've seen for things like Paradox. It's not the best, but it's also not the worst.
I mean, the fact that it gets you
The-
more draws throughout
Yeah.
the game
Yeah.
after doing it, like, that's not.
I think I would put this, like, right under Spare Supplies. Which
I
isn't
put it
in my
lower.
current... It's,
I think it's above what the bad one.
There's
For
quite a
Wellspring.
few bad ones.
there's a...
There's
yeah,
a lot of bad ones.
It's above
I
Icar
probably
Wellspring
would
in
put
my
it
eyes.
above... Yeah, it's above Icar Wellspring, below Spare Supplies. But losing life is a decent chunk of it, and not being able to, like, sacrifice itself also hurts for what, like, eggs and Paradox wants to do generally, but I think generally this card is not a terrible egg.
Yeah, this card is weird. It's just like I do not know how to evaluate this card, but I do think there's eventually going to be some sort of deck that just like, yes, I get to play Eye of Vecna and what's the dumb 4-mana Cosmo Elixir?
Oh, and just go
Cosmos
like
Elixir.
life
Yeah,
neutral and draw
yeah,
2 cards sometimes, and
yeah.
like draw 2 cards each turn. Yeah.
So it's just like I
Doesn't
think that there
Cosmos
might
Elixir
be
not
some,
give you life if you don't draw the card if you draw the card?
yeah,
Yeah. So if you're
if you
above your
aren't,
life total, then
yeah.
it will still you'll be life negative for the turn, but you'll draw 2 instead. But then as soon as you dip below your starting life total, it'll start being life neutral.
And to address in cash and chat, it's not that this card isn't good. It is that this card doesn't have a home that isn't better served by other cards.
Yeah, like
Where does this card go that there isn't a card that you can see and it's like this better fits the strategy that the game is playing out to be? This being 2 mana every time for a card is the biggest thing that kills it for me when it comes to certain
yeah.
decks. Because if I can
Yeah, it's
just be
like
like
it doesn't.
2 mana, 2 life Phyrexian Arena, I'm in. Like just,
Yeah.
but it's there's a little
Also,
bit more
a
going
lot
on
of
here.
colors have Phyrexian arenas now in some
Yeah.
form.
And many
Like-
decks have access to Maze Mind Tome, which will often do about the same amount of card draw over the course of a game as Eye of Vecna will.
Gain
a little
you
bit
4
less,
life instead of hit you.
Also, less
usually
restrictive
about 4.
timing is more I was
Yeah.
gonna say
Yeah.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
I
timing
think
is
that
very weird. You have to like you have to do it before you see the card that you've drawn for turn anyway, so you don't even get to figure out if you have stuff to do with your mana first.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
but I think in a deck that's gonna have a lot of some excess life and a bunch of excess mana, it definitely has some play. And
Honestly, I think the biggest home for this card might be like a mono white control deck.
yeah, I think this the home for this card is in any deck that was playing Dawn of Hope.
Maybe.
Yeah. I yeah, that's pretty much that's valid.
That's fair.
I think that it kind of falls into a similar view that I have for Contact Other Plane, which is that I feel if this card had come out like a
Last
year
year. Yeah.
ago, yeah, if it came out a year ago, then I would love to be seeing this card because we didn't have nearly as many ways to just draw cards every turn in pretty much every color.
And also not nearly as many ways to die to losing 2 life every turn.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, this isn't a terrible egg. And speaking of not terrible eggs, our next card is Treasure Chest.
I mean, I guess it's not the
I-
worst.
It's a weird egg. I like weird egg.
It's
I'm
a
not
weird
sold
egg.
The
Yeah,
thing-
it's
but
the
I'm
thing about
interested to
Treasure
see
Chest-
what
really
you
a
have.
weird egg.
Is just the way the abilities work together. They seem kind of
Yeah.
unintuitive.
So,
Seismic, what does
for
this
reference,
card do?
It's 3 mana for an artifact, and it has an ability for sacrifice treasure chest, roll a d20. On a 1, the chest is trapped and you lose 3 life. On a 2 through 9, you create 5 treasure tokens. On a 10 through 19, you gain 3 life and draw 3 cards. And on a 20, you search your library for a card. If it's an artifact card, you may put it onto the battlefield. Otherwise, put it into your hand, then shuffle. So, my experience with this card has so far been when I activate the ability of Treasure Chest, I really want one of the 2 abilities between 2 through 9 and 10 through 19. I either
you get the
want
other
to
one?
create 5 treasure or to gain 3 life and draw 3 cards.
And you don't get
When
it.
I do that, I don't really care about the other one. And sometimes I get what I want. And that's a cool feeling. But I cannot consistently say that that is what I will get. And so if I, really need to have this treasure chest activation net me mana in order to play out more spells, if I don't get it, I'm feeling actually kind of bad. Like, I don't think the 1 or the 20 are, like, that important, and I think it's interesting to note that this is the only card in the set that has a unique effect for getting a 1.
Mhm.
It's also
and
the only
that-
ability on the card that is named, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
They wanted to really make it feel bad.
They really wanted you to know that this chest is trapped 5% of the time.
I will
but-
say, funnily enough, the 20, you can put cards in your deck to emulate 2 through 9 and 10 through 19. Actually, don't know
Yeah.
if we have a gain 3 life and draw 3. Point being is that you can get, what's it called? Chromatic.
You can get chromatic orrery off of
Yeah.
off
Yeah,
of the
and that chromatic
20.
orrery is actually what I would say you probably want to just play instead of treasure chest, because it's 3
Yeah.
plus 4 to be 7. Chromatic orrery just comes in, you pay 7 mana, you tap it for 5 mana of any color, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you can
It's-
draw cards. off
I
of it.
definitely think that's the biggest thing against it, is that the idea that, 7 mana gets me 5 treasure is actually kind of alluring, especially when it's in 2 separate payments. However, like,
We have
you
chromatic
can't
orrery.
say that that's the effect, and when you want that effect to, get 5 mana, and instead you draw 3 cards, you hate that, because that's not what you needed and or sculpted your turnaround.
Yeah.
And conversely, when you're saying, hey, I die on my opponent's next turn unless I gain 3 life here, then getting 5 treasure at that point means nothing.
You have a 55%
think-
chance of getting a effect you want if you only want one or the other of the middle effects.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this card isn't good enough, just on the merit that it isn't often enough doing what you need it to, in the sense that it has, because of all the words on it, this is just one of those cards where you're gonna look at it like, look at all these good things, when you could play a more consistent card. Like, let's
Mhm.
say an artifact for 3 mana that is in this set, like Dungeon Map, which can just kill your opponent by venturing infinitely because Paradox Engine if you need to. Like,
Yeah.
there are other more consistent ways to do things, and this isn't it, unfortunately.
So I will
mean, if
say
you-
that
if you want to
with
lose
a-
by rolling a bunch of dice, I'm in.
yeah.
But
I will say that with a lot of these dice effects, especially the ones that are in some way repeatable, things like Wizard Spellbook, this, if you have like a way to play it from the graveyard, which if you're playing it, you probably do.
Hope you do.
A lot of the things that you repeatedly can roll dice for, I feel like I would love these cards if I got to choose the like middle effect the first time. But yeah, if I got to choose create 5 treasure tokens on treasure chest, I would love that. Or for Wizard Spellbook, if I got to choose cast a thing for 1 the first time, I would love that. The fact that I can't means that, there is a non-zero, and in fact a pretty decent amount of the time, where I am getting an effect that I don't want, and I'm putting a lot of mana into it.
Yeah.
also, for the purposes of templating, I find it kind of funny that instead of making the 2 middle abilities on this one a 45% chance, they just went and made the treasure version a 40% chance.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, I have to assume it's because, I mean, we can just keep that 10 to 19 right there. But
Yeah,
it's just a little, it's a little weird looking at it.
Yeah. And I think this card is one that I was really excited to see, but I think in practice, its randomness means that you just don't get what you want enough.
Speaking
No.
of more consistent cards, our next card, Cave of the Frost Dragon. This is a land. If you control 2 or more other lands, Cave of the Frost Dragon enters the battlefield tapped, and it says, tap, add a white mana. And then it also has this ability for 4 and a white. Cave of the Frost Dragon becomes a 3/4 white dragon creature with flying until end of turn. It's still a land. I put it in the chat so we were ready for this.
So we
So, I would
on
just like to
screen we
say,
have
we're talking about all these lands kind of in a
Yeah.
lump. So
Yeah,
there's
we're gonna talk
this is
about
the
all
cycle of
Yes.
each of the 5 colors. All of them tap for their color and have that first land of text if you control 2 or more other lands that comes in tapped. That's a given for
Yeah.
each of these lands. The difference is what it
Yes.
turns into when you animate.
Yes. So
Yeah.
now to go through the other ones. Den of the Bugbear for 3 and a red until end of turn. Den of the Bugbear becomes a 3/2 red goblin creature with whenever this creature attacks, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token that is tapped and attacking. It is still a land. Hall of the Storm Giants is 5 in a blue until end of turn. Hall of the Storm Giants becomes a 7/7 blue giant creature with Ward 3. It's still a land. Hive of the Eye Tyrant, which is 3 in a black for until end of turn. Hive of the Eye Tyrant becomes a 3/3 black beholder creature with menace, and whenever this creature attacks, exile target cards from the defending player's graveyard. And Lair of the Hydra for X and a green. Until end of turn, Lair of the Hydra becomes an XX green Hydra creature. It's still land, X cannot be 0. All these lands are
So-
honestly very interesting. The fact that they
Yeah.
have to come in early to be untapped, which I think is a great way to balance it, by the way.
yeah. These
Yeah.
these are not just fast lands, they're actually faster than fast lands. Fast
Yeah,
lands
they're
you're
super
okay if you
speedy.
play them as your third land. These have to come in as your second or first land in order to enter untapped.
Yeah.
Which is not really that easy of a task. So Effie has a question in chat. The level amounts, I believe, are tied to rarity.
Yes.
Yeah, like so the levels are higher depending on rarity, and so like I think there's one for Evolving Wilds where its module frame is an adventure for levels 1 through 4. So yeah, it is tied to rarity.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's tied to rarity.
And I think the dragon queen is like, yeah, it's uncommon.
It's an
so level 5 to
uncommon, so it's
10,
5 through 10. Yeah.
and then the rares are 10 through 19 or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something of
And I
that
think
sort.
yeah.
Something I do
found
want
one
to
that
note is
breaks
that
it.
Ooh,
11 through 16. We love Treasure Vault being the black sheep.
Oh, treasure.
Also,
Ah, Treasure Vault.
speaking of treasure vault,
Why
I'm
are
surprised
you an
that
artifact land?
none of you who were going absolutely ballistic seeing it actually put it on the list of cards you wanted to talk
I just
about.
didn't think it was worth talking
I-
about. Like it's
I think it's
it is
good.
such a card, but it is not worth talking about because all I'm
Yeah.
gonna say is artifact and it make artifact.
I mean, I think the only
Yeah.
thing that's good for, in my eyes, is transferring mana from one turn to another at a rate of 2 to 1.
I mean,
I
I was gonna
literally
say
have
the
one thing to say about Treasure Vault and Artifact and Go Mana Go, and that doesn't make for that interesting of content. Anyway,
I was
back to
more
the
so-
subject of
I was more so gonna say that it can be Whir mentioned and that it's 1/1 mana if you're playing Storm Vault, which some decks have been
Yeah.
playing. But back to
Um,
the creature lands, which we are talking about.
yeah. I think that being fast, like super fast lands, means that I kind of want a reason to be playing these. Like
I think part of it also is that
It-
Lair of the Hydra, specifically in like a mono green deck, still comes down untapped in the turns that really, really matter. Like your turn 1
Yeah.
Llanowar Elves, your turn 2 Mana Dork.
yeah, I think Lair of the Hydra is my favorite and what I would call the best. Just because I can see a definite and obvious use case for it.
Mhm.
The others I'm a little bit more skeptical on, and I think that the times when these lands come in tapped because you top deck it on turn 3, um, are going to not be great. And I don't think that the ability for them to become a creature that, depending on the game, can be anywhere from good to middling is that useful. I think that
I think in
I think
order
they're better
of
for control decks.
I think in order of playability, in my opinion, it goes green, red, white, blue, black.
Switch black and blue, and you have my opinion.
Yeah, all
I
right.
think that the red one's actually my least favorite. I think
I
it
think
obviously goes into goblins because
I
that's
think
think
Den of the
your
Bugbear
I think
is
the red
really
one's
good
pretty good.
I think the red
because
one
it
is too
leaves
good to
bodies
pass
behind.
up.
yeah. Leaving
Yeah,
a body
like
behind
it
is pretty
creates
nice,
extra
but
bodies. I'm
yeah,
most into
my
the
my
white
worry
one,
with
I
it is
think.
that it's the least relevant body. Like
I don't know.
Eh,
I kind of disagree
it,
with that.
It's a
a
4/3 in
3/2 is the
stats.
yeah, it gives you 4/3 in stats, but at 3/2 like dies to more things than any of the other ones. It also just like gets outclassed in a game super like quickly. Like if I'm playing against any mid-range deck, Den of the Bugbear pretty much doesn't activate.
I guess. Also,
Like
Effie, I know that you like the cool arts. I do want to mention one fun thing if we go to Hive of the Eye Parent, because it's the most easy to see on this one.
yeah.
If we can go to the normal art, they do
Yeah,
a
they
very
have
fun job at representing that these are creature lands by hiding the creature in the art.
Yes, good use of
Um,
negative space.
Yeah.
yeah.
Very cool
Mhm.
use of negative space. Some of them do it a bit better than the others. I don't like to call the Storm Giants in this case because it's just the statue.
It's a
It's just the
very
statue.
like
It's
cheaty
it's
way
the
of doing it
most
because yeah, it's
it's the
just the
most literal.
statue.
It's the most
Uh,
literal of them, but it's just
I
a very
for
cool
like
thing.
layer of
Sorry.
I hadn't seen that. That's so cool.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
yeah.
And then
It
like
is
the
such.
stalactite in the middle. The stalag, yeah, tight in the
might.
middle.
Tight,
No,
yeah.
Yeah.
I did
Yeah.
it right.
Stalagmite.
Is it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the mics
Yeah.
come up.
Right.
Stalactites have to hold
stalactite.
tight, yeah.
Yeah. The stalagmite in the middle, acting as the pupil in the eye.
Yeah, it's very good.
Yeah.
Very good. I
Like
enjoyed that
It's
a
like
lot.
these are
my
very
how
cool
much
arts.
I really like the non-Japanese mystical archive art for Approach to the Second Sun.
For the
The,
same
the
reason.
negative
Yeah.
space face
Yeah.
in there.
Yeah. I really like how these do show a good number of like how art kind of is innovated and in this Magic space in ways that it
Yeah.
doesn't normally get to do.
Yeah, but very quickly back on Den of the Bugbear. The main reason that I see it, and I'm just like this, like we can't ignore this, is it continues to make bodies, which is something that, say, a mono red deck cares about a lot. It doesn't care about the times where it draws us on 3 and it's tapped, because as we talked about earlier with the 3/1, the Vigilance 3/1, the 1-drop, 2-drop, 2-drop curves still usually look very good.
Mhm.
Not as good as 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop, but usually it is still a fast kill for most of those decks.
Yeah. I think my biggest worry about these in general is that they are so much better in your opening hand than they are in like any top deck. Being able to plan around these is kind of make or break for me between whether these are good and whether these are like kind of unfortunate to see at certain parts, because I've definitely got burned by being like, okay, I'm going to curve out here, and
Draw fast land on turn 4.
yeah, and if you draw a fast land on turn 4, you're like, okay, I have to stop my momentum at some point.
Draw Snarl after playing basic.
Yeah, things like that.
Yeah. And that is definitely a concern. It's definitely going to be a thing where you're just going to have to keep track. But I do think if you are playing an aggressive strategy that runs hot and runs fast, I do think it is worth at least looking at these, especially if you play two color and already account for some tap lands in your curve. Just because the more times that you have a threat, even when control is relying a lot on instant speed interaction, the more times you can be like, didn't think you had to deal with a threat on the battlefield. The amount of times you get to play one of these lands and then play a creature that they care about, they just have to look at this and be like, you've played two threats they
Or
care about, and that land's gonna kill me eventually.
as the red aggro deck, you have played a bunch of creatures and things that have had to pull removal from them, and then they're sitting with a hand with like 3 counterspells in it, no longer any removal because they had to remove a bunch of your creatures. Den of the Bugbear will come in and finish things off, much like say a the snow one used to.
Yeah,
Still does.
Faceless Haven. And
Yeah,
Faceless Haven is still going to be killing people. There's the card that we didn't talk about this set that more people are going to be trying to play Faceless Haven for, and it was already being played a lot beforehand. So, just in general, like, we're gonna, like, creature lands are good. And whenever we see a creature land, we should be looking at it, honestly considering if it's worthwhile, and I think these are at least worth testing.
Yeah, I definitely want to see how people use these and if they are impressed with these.
Yeah.
I just have my reservations about playing more tap lands, especially in more aggressive decks.
I get you.
And
I
I
think
think
for,
that's
like,
going to come
something
to
like-
the end
Yeah.
of what we have set up here.
Yeah, this we've talked about all the cards that we want to talk about. We would talk about more cards, but we just want to make sure that this fits into a good 3-hour schedule. We don't want everyone to be here forever. Last time we talked
We
about
don't
every
want to
card
be here
we want.
forever.
Yeah, last time we talked about all the cards we want to talk about. That total recording was 6 hours, and that's not
Mhm.
fair to anyone.
Yeah, it broke me. That was a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but before
Also, 6 hours of
we-
broken audio, which
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Before we sound off and leave you, let's go to our closing section. The card that we think you should craft because it's cool, because we started doing this as a thing.
It's called the Craft Corner, Joker.
Is it the craft Korn Blightning? Tell us about your favorite album from Korn.
I didn't sign off on any of this. Jesus.
Oh, do we have to get licensing for that now?
No. Tell us about a card
use,
that we
fair
should
use.
craft. Tell us about a card that we should craft.
Okay. I had a few options for this because I stick to very specific archetypes, and I could have just like pulled some random is it nonsense. The card I want to talk about today is one that people will probably recognize from previous formats, but that hasn't really seen much play here. The card I'm talking about is Heart of Kiran. Heart of Kiran is 2 mana for an artifact vehicle. It is a 4/4 with flying and vigilance, and you can crew it for 3 mana, or you can crew it by removing a loyalty counter from a planeswalker you control.
For 3 mana or 3 power?
For
Or
3
3
power,
power.
tapped.
3 power, yeah, not 3 mana. That would be nice too. But we have plenty of ways to crew this as is. Obviously, this is a pretty large body. This is a Sarah Angel body that you can cast on turn 2 and then like get activations off of every turn afterwards. The big cost here is that it's less easy to consistently have planeswalkers than it was in 60 card formats, where this card with stuff like Chandra, Torch of Defiance back in Standard. But I don't think this is like an auto include by any stretch, because like again, you can't really consistently do it, but I think there are ways to build mid-range and arguably some versions of control. I think you kind of need to be a bit more creature dense than control decks in the format right now tend to be. But like
Mhm.
there are a decent number of utility creatures you can play that crew this. There are a good number of planeswalkers you want to be playing on 3 to 5 anyways that get value out of this. And it's just
Yeah.
big
Why?
on both offense and defense.
Yeah, and the fact
Why
that it
am I
has
not
vigilance.
playing this in?
Yeah, go.
Why am I not playing this in Super Friends?
That's a
That's me.
very
We
good
should be.
question.
But the fact
Honestly,
that it has vigilance
I should be,
Yeah.
and
is
Or-
like
it
the
has
biggest
vigilance,
Oh
and
yeah, vigilance
also
too. So it plays both offense and defense.
Honestly, the
Planeswalker
more
loyalties are higher than they've ever been.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
Oh
so
yeah.
like, if I go like this into Kiora, like Kiora's never gonna die anyway. Like,
Now it's being protected by a
Or-
4/4 flying
yeah, now it's
vigilance.
being protected by a 4/4, and I get
Or
to
like this
punish
into
any
Gideon
bad
Blackblade.
attacks.
Mhm.
Or even
Mm.
like just in general, like
Aggro is
Planeswalker
not
loyalties are
having a good
higher
time
than
with
they
that.
deserve to be right now. And so like you can go like Kiora or Royal Scions or most good 4-drop walkers, and like the removing a loyalty counter is barely a cost.
I will say, the more cards like Dragon Turtle we get, the more I like Heart of Kirin and like a wider variety of decks.
Yeah.
Sure.
Also just like 3 power utility creatures. Brazen Borrower,
Yeah,
Nimble
no, exactly.
Obstructionist.
Like that's
Like,
that's what I'm getting at, right? Like
we
the
have
more
bodies that do that too.
the more
and
the
it's-
more
yeah.
cards that we get that just like incidentally has 3 power, and while sometimes you'll be like, yes, I attack with my Dragon Turtle, sometimes you want something that's a bit bigger, something that has vigilance. Like this fills that kind of niche very interestingly.
Yeah.
Very small thing. If you are playing this with Sarkin, if you're playing this with Sarkin, what's it called? 5 mana?
The
Sarkin?
Masterless.
Yeah, if you're playing this with Sarkin the
Yeah.
Masterless, activate this before you activate Sarkin.
Yeah.
Because Sarkin makes
doesn't-
things not planeswalkers.
And it very specifically says from a Planeswalker.
I mean, you can crew it with the
with
planeswalker.
one of the
Yeah,
dragons.
you can crew it with
Yeah.
a dragon, but like that's not adding
You
any
know.
power.
Yeah. But like this
And-
card slaps.
Yeah,
and
thank you,
But that's
Blanding.
That's gonna be our thing.
Yeah.
Reminder
Remember.
that you can
yeah, you
Yeah,
go.
Alright,
So-
do you want to do this? Okay.
No,
you can
do
support
it.
us. Okay. You can support us by following the channel or by monetary means here on Twitch now because we're affiliate, as well as on Patreon at patreon.com/secondright. Pretty sure.
Yes.
I think we have a link for it in chat somewhere.
Yeah.
Effie will sound off on the things that we need.
And so we are we now are in a more available
Links,
state
links.
to have like monetary generosity from y'all, and also just like joining us on Discord, viewing our VODs, things like that really help out and really help us keep going and continuing this stuff, and it means a lot to us.
The more ways that you guys choose to support us, whether it be following or subscribing on YouTube or subscribing on Twitch or subscribing to our Patreon or just in anything that you do engaging with us, it lets us know that you guys enjoy listening to this, enjoy seeing this, enjoy being a part of this. Besides make you full. All right. And
Plug
with
champ
that,
signed off.
And
Champ
the
signed
other
off.
thing before we
Yes.
head off is just
Before
reminding
we
we
head
do
off.
do other streams on this particular Twitch channel.
Yes.
The next one is happening tomorrow. Me and someone, the co-host is yet to be determined, will be gathering for
Yeah.
limited experience at starting the same time this started, typically. So 3
Crafting
p.m.
some
Eastern.
AFR.
Drafting some Adventures in the Forgotten Realms, 100%.
Love to see it.
And
And then after that, on Tuesday, you will see myself and Effie continuing to play through Near Replicant. That game is
Weird.
weird.
So good.
It's a
we
time.
love it.
I'm
We
enjoying watching y'all play through it.
undecided on if we love the game or not.
Every time I watch you,
It creates
I watch you
emotions.
too, it's a different game.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a wild
Like,
ride.
We still got
I'm
a few
really
more
into
game
it.
modes to go.
Oh God. Why'd you have to? Oh.
And then
Then
Saturday is our
after
next
that-
stream slot, where the first bit is Spooky Right, I
Me
believe is the
and-
name of the
Yeah,
show.
Spooky Right Productions, where me and Effie go through various horror games because I'm terrible at playing horror games in pretty much every respect, and so having Effie along to be my guide is helpful. And we're currently going through Resident Evil. Resident Evil 1. I have a feeling we are closer to the end of the game than when we started.
Are you though? Are you?
And then
No
after
comment.
that,
Is
we
another
have
show of mine, yes.
After that is
the Rite of Passage,
Yes.
where UFO and I think Joker Boney is like
when
the
yes. I am the
theoretical supposed to be co-host. Play various roguelikes.
I have found a roguelike I enjoy. I have something
Ooh.
to show.
Cool.
Ooh,
Come
fun.
check out
And
Saturday
that
morning.
particular slot could also just be rogue-like indie games, like
Yeah.
a little bit further away from the roguelike genre, but it's going to be whatever quick game me and Joker determined is
feel
going to
like
be good for that
exploring.
week.
However, UFO feels like torturing me that week usually.
Hey, the last spell was great.
I did buy it and I've gotten to play it. Yes, it is great. But that is not the one that I have lined up for us.
Yeah, and the full
And-
VOD for the last spell is on YouTube right now, and
Yeah.
at the very least, you should see how I reacted to finishing that game, because I didn't know what was happening, and the second that it happened was such a relief, because I had just put in like 5 hours of work to think I was maybe about to fail.
Perfect.
It was
what everyone
really
loves.
close.
With that in mind,
Hey.
thank you everyone for watching, following things of that nature, and we will
It's
see
been
you
me,
next time.
Joker Boney.
And it's been me, UFO.
I've been Seismic Lawns.
And we've also had.
And this is Blightning.
And finally,
Alright.
we also have had.
And I've been your Wizard of Oz from Wish.com behind the curtain. This is Effie signing off. I'm going to run some commercials on the way out. If you're able to sit and watch them, enjoy the great views of Pepsi. It'll really help us out. Have a good one, everyone.
Yeah, goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.